All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.
Good evening and welcome to the Greenfield Town Council, October 17, 2018, 186th regular meeting being held at Greenfield High School cafeteria. This meeting is being recorded, videotaped, and broadcast. If any other persons present are doing the same, could you please notify me at this time? Okay, so the recorder is. Thank you, and GCTV, of course. The clerk will call a roll.
Counselor Sun.
Here.
Counselor Lobeck.
Present.
Counselor Alice.
Present.
Counselor Pyfrom. Here. Counselor Dolan. Counselor Gilmore. Here. Counselor Wheeler.
Here.
Counselor Mayo.
Here.
Counselor Linovich.
Here.
Counselor Mass. President Renault.
Here.
Vice President Ricketts.
Here.
Counselor Stemple.
We have a quorum. Please stand, if you can, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the Town Council meeting minutes from April 18th and May 16th?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Now we're on to the public comment portion. Treasurer Kelly, could you please pass me the sign-up sheet? So this is the part of our meeting where folks can sign up to speak on anything you wish. Thank you very much. Anything you wish to speak on. We ask that you keep it to 3 minutes, and I will call you up by name. And if you hadn't signed up after the list of signed up folks go, anybody else is welcome to come up for 3 minutes. So Steve Adam.
My name is Stephen Adam, and I come before the City Council as Chairman of the Greenfield Board of Health in support of number 15 new business food inspection services. As you know, the Health Department is responsible to enforce state sanitary, environmental, housing, and health codes. The department inspects food establishments, inspects wells and septic systems, responds to outbreaks of communicable diseases, and to occupational health and safety violations, cases of food poisoning and rabies, and enforces the state housing sanitary code. The Health Department also issues burial permits, regulates pesticide use, inspects tattoo parlors, and has to maintain emergency preparedness plans for a wide range of hazards. This is on top of enforcement responsibilities that are given to the department by the city through specific ordinances. By now, you're all aware of the crisis that faces our city's health department. This crisis actually began in June 2017 with the resignation of Health Director Nicole Zabko. Her replacement was terminated in January 2018 for cause, and the director's position in the health department has remained empty since. In February 2018, the health department lost Brianna Eichstadt, and in July 2018, Jamie Kolosevich resigned. But in May of 2018, Chelsea Little was hired as a health inspector. Ms. Little came from a transfer from another town department with minimal health experience. Fortunately, Ms. Little was able to gain some on-the-job training from Ms. Kolosevich prior to her resignation. But as you know, Ms. Little's last day is November 2nd. So in 1 year's time, the City of Greenfield's health department has collapsed, and the budget has substantially been cut to fulfill financial needs in other areas. The City of Greenfield simply cannot hire qualified health inspectors on a reduced budget. Furthermore, the work that the health department is required to do by law in a city the size of Greenfield cannot be completed by a single health inspector. In fact, it can barely be done by two. There's been a lot of speculation out there about what the health department does. Well, numbers don't lie. You take a look at the handout I provided with the graph, and you'll see that to date, with one inspector, only 1/6, yes, 1/6 of the required annual health inspections have been completed. And there are 300+ permits required by year's end, and some of those require additional inspections. We all serve as citizens. We all serve the citizens of Greenfield. That's why the mayor was elected, and that's why you were all elected as councilors. And Greenfield's a great city. We have a lot to offer, but we need to provide a safe environment for our citizens, our businesses, and visitors to our city. A well-run health department is invisible. You don't see it until it's needed. Take housing inspections. Yesterday, we had an emergency call from the fire department for an unsanitary and unsafe home. Who will respond to these calls going forward? And last year, we had a valid complaint of a foodborne illness at a popular restaurant. Months later, we had a case of a communicable disease. Both were resolved quickly and absolutely, and the health and safety of our citizens was never at risk thanks to rapid containment protocols. That's public health in action. Let's work together as elected and appointed officials to restore this critical department and maintain a safe Greenfield for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Karen Larrabee?
Karen Larrabee, 24 Oak Hill Acres in Greenfield. Hi, Mom. Good evening, counselors and viewers. Every time I come before you, I give you a little bit of information about the library. Tonight, before the meeting, I gave you receipts that I have held on to from the past year from taking out materials, mostly books, from the Greenfield Public Library. If you look at them, you'll see at the bottom the cost of buying these books. For example, if you look at, for example, this receipt is for 9 books borrowed. The cost of buying these books, $265.62. Amazing. What a savings that is, and that's just for circulated items. Add in the 380 free programs offered by the library, and you have the best bang for your tax dollars at work. In the past year, in our very limited meeting space, 380 programs, all sponsored by the Friends, were held in our meeting program rooms. In addition, 181 library meetings, for example, trustees, building committee, Friends, and staff meetings, took place for a total of 561, just library events and meetings. There were also 338 non-library meetings held. So as you can see, in our very limited and inadequate space, a lot was happening. Speaking of programs, last Saturday, the Friends of the Greenfield Public Library sponsored a second Saturday program for 3 to 5-year-olds that included listening to stories, singing songs, and craft making. They had tons of fun. We'll be sponsoring the next one on November 11th. On Saturday, October 27th, the Friends of the Greenfield Public Library will be conducting a used book sale from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m., and also we'll be drawing the winning tickets for our fall raffle at noon. Please stop by the library between 10 and noon for refreshments and your last opportunity to support us by buying a raffle ticket. Before then, we're going to be at Foster's on this Friday between 10 and 6, selling tickets and advocating for a new library. Thank you, Foster's. I love Greenfield, and I love the library, and I feel very strongly that we need a new facility. The state has awarded us $9.4 million towards a new facility. Thank you in advance for all your hard work to make this happen.
Thank you. Andrew Fisk.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Fisk. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut River Conservancy. We are the...
Andrew, I'm sorry, could you please state your address for the record?
Yes. I am an employee of the Connecticut River Conservancy. We are located at 15 Bank Row in Greenfield. I'm a non-resident.
Okay,
Is
gotcha.
that okay to speak now, or should I
Sure.
go at the end?
Yeah, no problem.
Great.
It's
Thank
okay.
you very much. You may know us as the Connecticut River Watershed Council. We were founded in 1952 at a meeting at the Weldon Hotel, and since 2001 we have been located at 15 Bank Row as we hope a admirable and responsible steward of the EA Hall or the Franklin County Courthouse building. I'm here tonight to speak in support of the plastic bag ordinance. The Connecticut River Conservancy, you may know, among the other things we do is to support now the 22nd annual Source to Sea River Cleanup. Many Greenfield residents and members of ours participate in this event to take responsibility for cleaning up their rivers. We're here to speak in support of this ordinance because we see solutions, and we really are endeavoring to stop trash before it becomes pollution. And one of the principal ways to do that is to eliminate waste or change products where that is feasible to do. And so we see a plastic bag ordinance as one very practical and reasonable solution towards eliminating the trash that is causing significant impacts to our environment. This initiative broadly is really about personal responsibility. That means people changing their behavior, whether that's to stop littering or to change their behavior when they go to the store. It's about government initiative, which in this case we see the reasonable ordinance that you are deliberating on, and it's also about corporate responsibility. This ordinance is one step towards solving a very large problem. We appreciate that there are many decisions that you have to confront in this. We do think the ordinance is a responsible mixture of, yes, a ban on a product that can be reasonably replaced with other things. It's also a reasonable price signal. People make decisions based on market or prices, and so the ability for a retailer to charge a fee is another incentive to change behaviors. We think that's very appropriate. But in the end, just thank you for deliberating on this. We do understand there's lots of questions of equity and fairness, and being able to consider how this is will affect local businesses. We think what the draft ordinance in front of you addresses those responsibly and appropriately. So thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you, Andrew. Dr. Doyle?
Good evening, councilors. Steve did such a good job that I really am going to go under 3 minutes, I hope. Anyways, my name is William Doyle, and I recently moved to the high-rise, 10 Congress Street.
Mark's going to get you the mic,
I'm sorry.
Dr. Doyle.
Yeah, my name is William Doyle. I recently have moved to the high-rise, 10 Congress Street. So basically, I'm a physician, pathologist, used to be a medical examiner here, and I have been on the Board of Health for at least 14 years, I believe. I was appointed originally by Mayor Forgy, and then I have been appointed at least twice, maybe 3 times by our current mayor. I'm very upset, really, what's happened. Really, you sort of cut the the legs from under us, really. You know, as Steve said, we have gone from an organization that I think was well respected in the community. I have been associated with the board, and you know, we've done a lot of good work, I believe, in prevention. Particularly, my interest as a pathologist has been in the suppression of smoking, and I think over the last 20 years, and not that a series of people have been on the board, and we have passed a lot of things, including, you know, the 21 age for smoking. The needle exchange program was something that we've worked on. And as Steve's mentioned, we have all kinds of things that we do, but I'm sort of talking more as what we do as a board. I just hope that that you can, you know, find it in your hearts to, you know, basically to put back the $50,000, you know, to our organization. And also, I think I should say a word for the building inspector too. He also is and needs some help too, and he doesn't have a spokesperson like the board. Anyways, thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you. Jacob Sprite.
Hello, I am Jacob Sprite. I live at 39 Gold Street, and
Jacob, could you just pull the mic a little closer to you, just so everyone can hear you?
so I'm here to talk in favor of the plastic bag ban. It seems only logical to me that it would be a better idea to outright ban plastic bags and put the fee on paper bags, as that's not quite a solution, as an incentive to get people to use reusable bags, as that seems like a better idea. I really don't have anything else to say.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jacob. Louise Amiot.
Louise Amio, 56 Madison Circle. Thank you for hearing me tonight. I am here, as you know. Councilors Sheila Gilmore and Tim Dolan have introduced an ordinance that would ban single-use plastic bags here in Greenfield. This ordinance would also call for a fee on paper bags. This effort is similar to one that Greenfield Rights of Nature introduced 4 years ago, and that was narrowly defeated. I'm here to support this new ordinance because the problem has not gone away. In fact, I dare say that there are few of us who have not seen the photos of the trash-covered beaches and the huge plastic gyres that are glutting all of our major oceans. Regarding the concerns that have been expressed to me regarding this ordinance, I'd like to just point out a couple of things. Number one, I sent to all of the councilors an email that I received from Brad Verder from Mass Green, and in his email there was a link to a list of information, and there was also an attachment. In case anyone here hasn't gotten a chance to see those two, I have made copies and would be glad to give them out to anyone who would like to have one. First, I'd like to point out that for concerns about paying, asking people who have financial difficulties to pay for the bags, first, the measure would not go into effect for at least a year following passage. During that time, I'm sure that banks and other businesses could be pressed to make an effort to provide reusable bags to anyone who would ask, or for all persons using community action services or free food distribution places or the housing offices or any such places that offer services. We might even be able to get people to make and donate reusable bags for people. In any case, people of goodwill would have ample time to accumulate bags and get used to using them, especially if they got frequent reminders. Second, for small businesses, providing paper bags would prove to be a financial hardship. By calling for a bag fee, these businesses would not suffer such effects and might even be able to make a tiny profit from them. Third, state law in Massachusetts provides for cities being able to establish a fee, but towns may not. So if anyone called towns in to see what was happening there, you would not have encountered fees there for this reason. And fourth, as I said at the Appointments and Ordinances meeting, by providing a fee to be paid, this would help people remember to bring their reusable bags rather than pay for a paper bag. Most of us don't want to pay for something if we don't have to. By doing this, trees that might be used to make bags would be spared, thus protecting them. They are an important source of carbon sequestration and oxygen production. And fifth, we have not encountered any negative effects being brought forward by communities that have adopted these policies. In closing, I'd like to say that we are as concerned as anyone for the people who have faced financial hardships, and we would do everything that we can to help everyone in the community get through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Dorothy MacGyver.
Dorothy McIver, 88 Columbus Ave. So I'm here, of course, to support passing this ordinance and have been involved in working on this for the last few years. We are the first green community in Massachusetts, and yet at this point, 85 cities and towns have now passed a law to reduce plastic bags. And I think it would be really, really good at this point if we could take a stand and become the 86th. So I'm hoping for that. And as Louise has said, the fee assessed to paper bags will help the merchants cover their costs, and most communities have done something to this effect, and the fee has varied from one community to another. I did look up a number of them, and it's been anywhere from 5 cents to, I think, 30 cents was one of the ones I saw. So it's important to be implementing this transition, and I think we should come up with something. I really feel that we have to have a fee on the bags, and I know that there's some disagreement about that. And as Louise said, there is a year time for implementation. I know that I sometimes go to the store and I get in the store and I've found that I've left my bags in the car and I'll go out and get them, and once in a while I'll get a paper bag to use for recycling. But over the years, I've gotten a whole collection of them. In fact, I was given another one today at an event I went to. I got a bag with a bunch of stuff in it, including a coffee mug from the event on the senior center I had today for fraudulent behavior and scams. And so everybody there got a bag. And a lot of places are handing them out. I got one a couple of months ago somewhere else. So I don't think it's going to be a problem finding people that are willing to help contribute to that. And that it's really important that people learn to change their behaviors. And then there's the whole issue about recycling. As we know, there's a problem all over the country now about getting recyclables taken care of, and the people are paying for having their recyclables removed now. And we're still pretty lucky in this area, but plastic bags, I think as I mentioned last week, when you recycle your plastic bags, they have to be clean. And they have to be dry. They can't be wet. And so you have to take care when you're cleaning them that you get them totally dry, or the whole batch will get thrown out. And if you get compostable bags mixed in with them, that messes it up as well. And it said that while manufacturing plastic bags is cheap, recycling them is not cost effective. Recycling 1 ton of plastic bags costs $4,000, and the recycled product can be sold for $32. As a result, less than 1 to 5% of plastic bags are recycled each year. So besides getting them out of the waterways and out of the trash, they're not all getting recycled, so they're still going to the trash. Bag laws are effective. Without a fee, laws typically reduce bag waste by 60 to 80%. With a modest fee, bag laws reduce both plastic and paper by more than 90%. So I hope that we don't get hung up on this issue of the fee, and that we can get through that somehow and come up with an agreement and pass this ordinance. It's the right thing to do for our environment at this time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dorothy. Peg Hall.
Hi, my name is Peg Hall, 34 Pierce Street. I am a solid waste and recycling consultant. I have worked in the recycling field since 1987, mostly for municipalities, working on cost-saving measures. I work on writing legislation with product stewardship initiatives. With apologies to the A&O committee who has heard some of this before, I'd like to go back to the basics. The solid waste hierarchy that we all hear about says waste reduction, then recycling, then, reuse and recycling, then waste to energy, then landfilling. We have very few opportunities for actual waste reduction. We tend to focus a lot on recycling, and although that is my field, that is choice number 2. The first choice is waste reduction, and there aren't that many good ways to do that. This law, if it becomes a law, would achieve that. So when I write legislation, what I look at is what are the drivers? Because what we're trying to achieve is we're not trying to take away plastic and substitute paper. Yes, paper is recyclable, yes, paper is compostable, and yes, paper actually, bag for bag, or even 2 plastic bags for 1 paper bag, has a greater negative environmental impact when you consider the full life cycle analysis of the product. That was looked at back by Franklin Associates back in 1990, and there were lots of campaigns back then to try to say, oh, plastic is great and wonderful. Well, we've realized that there are some problems with the plastic since then. But some of the things that held back then are still true if we thought about replacing plastic with paper by mistake. 1,000 plastic bags is about 3.5 inches tall. 1,000 paper bags is about 46 inches tall. 1,000 plastic bags weighs about 15.6 pounds. 1,000 paper bags about 140 pounds. So think of the transportation costs, think of the storage needs, the fuel consumption. The paper bags are not efficient, and we are not trying to drive people to paper bags. So we need to look at both the ban on the plastic and the fee on the paper to make the incentives be in the right place to say, remember your reusable bags, folks. That's what you're supposed to be doing. So I think that this ordinance strikes the right balance because we're giving the businesses, the government, we can play the bad guy here. You can do the good cop, bad cop thing. We can let the businesses say, I'm sorry, I have to charge you for this, so that their customers don't come back to them and try to blame them for it. So again, I think I will just conclude by saying I think that this ordinance strikes the right balance of trying to drive things towards waste reduction, which is the goal that we're trying to achieve here. Thank you.
Thank you, Peg. So there's nobody else signed up. Does anybody else want to come and speak for 3 minutes on, this is our public comment, any topic? Come on over, Wendy.
Hi, Wendy Goodman, 529 Green River Road. And thank you all for continuing to do this. What's been going through my head is us being responsible. And that what that means is the ability to respond. And we're in a time where we need to respond to what we're all hearing all the time. So the fact that this is a plastic bag ordinance is the very beginning of a long journey. I said before, it doesn't even make sense to me that we have a question about it. We need to be able to respond to what's going on in the world, and this is a very small first step and a very significant one. You've heard lots of other reasons. I don't need to reiterate all of that. So thank you, and I hope you vote for our future.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come speak or come on up? And please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Matthew Dean. My business is Foster Supermarket at 70 Allen Street. I'm a Berniston resident, so I'm not a resident of Greenfield. I'm just here basically not to talk against the ban, just to tell you some of the business concerns about it. Obviously, the fee that's been brought up, and it's all well and good that we have the ability. I don't know if, I haven't really seen, is this going to be a mandated fee, or is this going to be something that's left up to the businesses to decide if they're going to charge it? Because obviously a business in Turner's isn't going to be, I mean, we're not competing in just the Greenfield marketplace. And many of the businesses in Greenfield aren't. It's become at least a regional thing. So we're competing with Brattleboro, we're competing with a Market Basket in Swansea now, which is huge. And so these places aren't going to fall under this ban. Theoretically, it should save me money. I don't have to buy the plastic bags anymore. We can shift the cost over to the consumer. They can buy, you know, the best would be the reusable bags, which, you know, as the lady couple before me spoke, switching them to paper is not a panacea. The paper, if you do any research, the paper, you have to actually reuse a paper bag 6 or 7 times before the total carbon footprint becomes the same as a plastic bag. So plastic is actually a very good container for carrying things. It's a very bad container for littering. And it's basically a littering problem more than a container problem. We take anybody's plastic bag backs for recycling. I know the other 2 big grocery stores in town do as well. We've met with them in the past. When this came up 4 years ago, I recognize a few of you. We gave you tours of the different stores and stuff and what we're doing. But so, you know, I consider myself an outdoorsman, environmentalist. I'm a fisherman, a hunter, a hiker. I love all that stuff. So I'm not trying to talk, you know, against the ban. I just think it's kind of a simple solution for a very, very complex problem. And if it shifts the resources over to paper, which it's a better littering solution, but it's not a better pollution, you know, it costs, I think I read somewhere, it's like 4 times the air and water pollution to produce a paper bag, and then you're getting rid of trees, which someone said, you know, is helping the carbon footprint as we go. So, you know, my big concern, we're going to have a year, I heard, to get rid of the plastic bags. Well, the way I have to order my plastic bags, because they have a custom logo on it, our own design on them, I have to order around 100 cases at a time. They get them in. I don't have to take them all at once, and I haven't paid for them yet, but they're holding them all made in a warehouse, and it could get a little touchy if come a year from now they still have 50 cases sitting in there. I mean, I haven't paid them for it, but, you know, I feel like I probably should because they ordered them for me. So, I mean, on that end of it, that could be, you know, an issue. And then the only other issue I have, when people bring in reusable bags, it's great. We love to see it. I think that's absolutely the best way to go. But in a very, very small way, it introduces a shoplifting threat to a business, because now instead of an empty cart, they have several recyclable bags sitting there, and it's a problem you don't like to think about, but unfortunately it's out there. And, you know, it's another issue that the business community is going to have to deal with. So, I mean, other than that, the only other thing I'll say is I believe my customers, you know, are more or less against, I don't know if they're against the ban, but, you know, what's the question the grocery store asks you, paper or plastic, when you come in there? 7 to 8 out of 10. So I would guess 75% of our customers will say plastic, just because it's such a handy. And, you know, if they're all, you know, if they're all ending up in the rivers, that's obviously a bad thing. You know, is it better to ban them? Is it better to educate people that you can recycle them here, here, and here? Would it be good to make every store that uses them? I know the drugstores, I don't believe, take them back for recyclables.
I'm sorry, Matthew, we've gone a little bit
Okay,
beyond,
I'm
so if
sorry.
you could, well, you
All
can
right,
finish
I
up what
was
you're
just saying
saying.
that maybe something similar to what they do with the oil. If you distribute a plastic bag, you have to take it back for recycling. You don't have the
Yeah.
option.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that maybe could be passed instead of a ban. But, you know, if people are for the ban, I'm not saying I'm against the ban either. It's just some of the things that the business community has to deal with if the ban is enacted.
Well,
Okay.
thank you for your thoughts.
Yep.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Well, look at, I'm going left, right. Yes. You have 3 minutes. You don't have to be real quick.
Well, it's a quick thing. I'm Nancy Robbins. I live
Hi,
at
Nancy.
35 Solar Way in Greenfield. And I just want to say 2 things about the ban.
Oh, Nancy, could you pull the
Yeah.
mic a little closer?
2 quick things about the ban. One is that I live up in the solar village where the wind whips through up there. And so people who try to clean out their bags and recycle them. We'll put them outside, or maybe there'll be some in the recycling. And how many bags do we pull out so many plastic bags from our front yard. I think it like whips up, maybe even from the landfill or something. We don't use them and we find so many. So I'm really excited about the ban, the possibility of the ban, even just to keep the bags from whipping in my yard. And I know that's nobody's intention, but they fly around, you know, they're light. And then the second part, I see two kids here. One of them's mine. And these kids are going to get our rivers. Like, let's think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Our little boy got so big. He used to be so small.
Hi, I'm Faith Kaufman, 39
Faith.
Gold Street. I didn't come planning to speak, but something was said just 2 people ago that I wanted to respond to. I love Foster's Market. I'm thrilled that we have Foster's Market. It's one of my favorite things about Greenfield. And I shop there a lot. And so I'm one of the customers about whom it was said, we prefer plastic bags. I don't prefer plastic bags. I feel foolish every time I get to the checkout and I forgot to bring my reusable bag with me. So if I have only a few things, I put them in my purse. And if I have more than can fit in there, then I ask for a paper bag. But I'm the sort of person who is like, okay, it's 10 cents for the paper bag. I'd be like, wait, let me go to the car and get that bag I forgot to bring in. I really would. And I also agree with what Nancy said. My son's here, and he spoke earlier. I don't want to leave all this pollution for him. That's all.
Thank you. Last call. Okay. We have a public hearing and a second reading. Councilor Stemple, will you read the public hearing, please?
My pleasure. Public hearing in accordance with Home Rule Charter of the Greenfield Town Council. I'm a little too close. The Greenfield Town Council will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, October 17th, 2018 at 7 p.m. at the Greenfield High School Cafeteria, 21 Bar Avenue, to receive public input on the following. Authorize the payment of a bill from FY18 from the FY19 Human Resource Budget in the amount of $142.30. The sum of $1 million, my apologies, $1,978.90 be appropriated from the reserve fund to pay bills from the previous fiscal year. The sum of $28,357 be appropriated from the Compensated Absences Fund 8450 to fund buybacks for unused vacation personal sick time as provided by contract. The sum of $23,670 be appropriated from the Contractual Stabilization Fund to fund provisions of terminations provided by contract. The sum of not to exceed $43,000 be appropriated from the Contractual Stabilization Fund to fund retroactive wage provisions of a new contract agreement with Unit B of the Police Union. The Town Council will ask the same on Wednesday, October 17th, 2018 at 7 p.m. at Greenfield High School Cafeteria, 21 Bar Avenue. Materials can be obtained from the Town Clerk's Office, 14 Court Square, from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, or phone 413-772-1555, extension 6163. Karen Renaud, Greenfield Town Council President.
Thank you. So I'm opening up the public hearing now for these items specifically at about 7:43. Does anybody wish to speak on these items specifically? I'm going to keep the public hearing open as we get through reports from the mayor, town officers, employees, superintendent of schools, and school committees. So I know that the mayor is not here tonight, but could we have the treasurer and director of finance and Director Smith? Oh. First, we're going to do the second reading. And then I just gave you time to kind of prepare to come up. We're going to do the second reading, and then you guys are going to come up.
You stole the wind from beneath my
know.
wings. Town Council second reading, October, hold on to your seats, everybody. Town Council second reading, October 17th, 2018. If you missed it, here it comes again. Authorize the payment of a bill from FY18 from the FY19 human resource budget in the amount of $142.30. The sum of $1,978.90 be appropriated from the reserve fund to pay bills from the previous fiscal year. The sum of $28,357 be appropriated from the compensated absences fund 8450 to fund buybacks for unused vacation personal sick time as provided by contract. The sum of $23,670 be appropriated from the Contractual Stabilization Fund to fund provisions of terminations provided by contract. The sum of not to exceed $43,000 be appropriated from the Contractual Stabilization Fund to fund retroactive wage provisions of a new contract agreement with Unit B of the Police Union.
Okay, come on up.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
At this time, Mayor Martin could not be here this evening, so in his stead, I want to introduce Marlo Warner, our new DPW Director, and give him a little bit to say a few things.
Good evening, thank you. I won't take up a lot of your time. I'm sure I'll get plenty of opportunities to speak with you in the future. I started on October 1st. Previously, I worked for the town of Greenfield for 16 and a half years. Back in March of 2016, I took the director's job for the town of Hadley. This opportunity came before me to come back to my hometown. It's pretty exciting for me and my family. The transition is going real smooth, as it should, having so much time with the town, serving the town in the past. I've already started digging into capital, taking a look at what's gone on the last 2.5, 3 years, starting to look at budget stuff. But that's really all I wanted to say tonight, unless you have questions for me. I'm extremely excited to be home.
Do any of the councilors have questions? Councilor Alice.
I'm happy to have you back.
Thank you.
I think I speak for anyone who's worked with you on the council before. It's one of the right decisions that we've made a long time. So thanks for coming back. We appreciate having you.
Thank you.
Councilor Sund.
I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're living where you are. But I'm glad of the results. You know, the things I've talked about. You know, as I come into town hall quite often, and so good to have you have an open door.
Thank you.
Vice President Ricketts.
I'm very glad that you're back with us, and I will be coming to speak with you because I'm very interested about the Wisdom Way Road, and that's a real priority for me, but basically I am just really happy to see you back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick, I handed out some cards to most of you, my business card before the meeting. Whoever I missed, I'd be more than happy to give you my card. I've got my cell phone. The door is always open. Any questions, don't hesitate to call or email or stop in.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
That's a long one.
Good evening. Again, as Mark said, Mayor Martin had an emergency and was unable to attend tonight. I understand, I've understood for the past 5 weeks that there are a lot of questions about debt. There are a lot of questions about a lot of things. I've tried to answer your emails. Oh, by the way, I don't know, maybe all of you don't know me. My name is Lane Kelly. I've tried to answer your emails as succinctly as I can, but some of them are very long and involved. So in some cases, I have written out answers for the interrogatories and questions that come up. And I think some of them are in your packet, but when we talk about debt tonight, which I know you're hanging on your chairs about, I tried to tell you for years about debt. Do you remember that? And nobody would ever listen. So now I've got you.
Director Kelly, could you please put it a little bit closer to you? Like this?
Yes, I'd love to. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So Kelly Varner, who is actually your resident debt expert. And you should be glad that it's her because she hates debt. She doesn't like it. She thinks it's, she doesn't like owing. But she's managed to learn over the past few years a lot about it, and she really is the one who knows the most about it in the current administration. We're going to pass out some things to you that'll, would you mind? Thank you. That will undoubtedly make your eyes spin, but hopefully they'll answer some of the questions. There's a request, I believe, at the last council meeting for a simple graph that would show the debt and where it falls with the 10% and what the limits are and that sort of thing. It's not a simple graph, but it is a graph, and it does show you where it's 8 to 10%. And the larger sheet provides you with most of the data that backs up the chart. So, hopefully she's going to bring me one of those back. Some of the questions we've had are the city's current, do not the total bans plus the existing bond debt equal more than the 5 to 10% of recommended debt that we carry according to guidelines presented? So I think we have to start basically with what is the figure that should represent 5 to 10%, and that is bonded debt. That is not authorized unissued, and it is not borrowing in anticipation of revenue or anticipation of bonding. It is simply the bonded debt once it is bonded permanently for a project. So 8 to 10%, 5 to 10% represents only the bonded debt. And you said there is $43 million? $43 million worth of general obligation debt right now. That's general fund. In addition to that, there's about $3 million in sewer or water, I think, and $4 million in sewer, or it might be reversed, but the enterprise funds are much smaller. So our debt limit, somebody wants to know what the debt limit is. Your debt limit is 5% of your EQV, which for us represents, that's your equalized valuations, I think it is. 5% of Greenfield's EQV is about $72 million. So you're not butting up against your debt limit. You are well within that. And based on these charts, now, the charts that you have here are using an operating budget figure that goes up on average about 0.75 a year. Now, I know you think that's great and you'd love to have it that way, but the reality is our fixed costs go up more than 0.75 a year, and they will continue to go up as long as we continue to be a service organization where we don't sell a product and we have to hire people and give them benefits and show them how to retire and those kind of things. So this is a very conservative estimate of the operating budget and the increases. We also are showing you the existing non-exempt debt. Now, exempt debt is what you voted for back in 2014 when you passed the debt exclusion for the high school. That means it's exempt from Prop 2.5. When we figure what your Prop 2.5 is, what the Prop 2.5 increase can be every year, whatever that is, then gets the exempt debt added onto it. Anybody out cold yet? Okay, good. That's encouraging. Believe me, this is not an easy subject. So please, I don't mean to be flippant about it. I've had 20-some years of this, and that's why I can more or less talk to you, hopefully, in terms that are not going to absolutely put you to sleep or that are so esoteric that you don't understand what we're talking about. So the existing non-exempt debt is all the current bonded debt. No authorized unissued, no bans. Authorized unissued is a piece of paper. The City of Greenfield Town Council authorizes you to borrow $2 million to repair Nash's Mill Bridge, whatever it is. That's an authorization. It means nothing until you act on that authorization in terms of bonded debt. And it still doesn't mean anything until you get out to bond it. So it's an authorization to borrow. You go out once you know what your project is, and you borrow temporarily. You can borrow temporarily for 2 years at a time. So let's say you borrow $1 million on this project to start the project. For the next you'll renew that $1 million. You may borrow the balance of the $2 million, whatever it is, and eventually you're going to have to bond it, because in municipal debt, and actually I'm not sure it isn't all debt, there's a 2-year limit. You can only temporarily borrow for 2 years. That is to say, without having to make a pay down, which is in effect a principal payment. So we've got an authorization, okay. Now we've got a ban, okay. Until such time as you take the money on that project and bond it along with all sorts of other projects, it is not a part of your debt that we're figuring here at 10%. You're aware of it, you need to know what it is, but it is not part of your bonded debt. You budget temporary interest in the operating budget. You hope you've got the right figures. This year we do not. This is not a secret. We're going to talk about that at some point, probably next month. But the reality is, bonded debt is what you're looking at. We run an average of about $2.3 million in bonded debt and bonded debt interest right now. And then that's in the operating budget. And then you have the high school debt, which is state qualified. That's a whole nother bond issue. And that is added, those payments are added on to get to your full bonded debt. So this figure you're looking at out here in the dark column is the non-exempt, includes all of the debt, exempt and non-exempt. High school, everything is in here. And you're still, for the most part, you're close. You're up at 10% in some instances, but you're still not over that 10% limit. That is why we've been talking for some years. We've got a general bond issue going in this year. It was going to be bonded last year. We're beating that one to death, but it is true. It was going to be bonded on June 1st. It's now going to be bonded on June 1st of 19. You have as a separate issue, but it'll be done at the same time, the Johnstown Community Center. You have also the Olive Street parking garage. All of these things are coming up in the next year, basically. They're all going to be part of this bond issue. Now, 2 years out, you've got a projected bond issue. It is likely you're always going to have something to bond, but the key here is the less you have to borrow, the better. The fewer things you have to replace, the better. The more you bulk up stabilization so that you can say, no, we don't need to borrow $700,000 for a fire truck. Perhaps we can pay for it with stabilization. But it's all part of the process. You have to put money into stabilization and keep putting it in. That's another argument. So your projected bond issues, and you'll see that they're a little lighter here, along with the projected ones for 23, the general obligation bond, and then you're into the next phase. The next phase includes what we have now added as phase 1 of public safety. At your instruction, the mayor has gone back out and said, okay, if we're going to go for construction, we're not going to go for leasing. We're going to have to do it in 2 phases. The first one ultimately the first one of utmost importance is the fire station and dispatch for different reasons. The fire station, because if you don't do something with the fire station, it's going to fall down. But secondly, it also sits right where you want your new library. So this is projected fire dispatch starting in 23. Now, the other thing to remember in bonding, once you bond it, you pick a date. We're going to bond on June 1st of 2019. Your first payment is not, your first principal payment is not due for a year from then. It's due in 24. And as is
The interest, there are 2 payments every year, 6 semi-annual interest and 1 single bond payment. Any questions so far? Oh, God.
Questions, but I don't know if there's more.
Well, there's more. Why don't you wait? Because I wouldn't want you to have to come back and ask more questions after. The projected library is here. I will stop if you want, I don't.
No, I think it keep going.
The projected library is here. Now, the other thing to understand is that in reality, you see this is just to give you the snapshot through 2030. If you look down below where you see 2042, 44, 44, 46, that's when the debt payments actually are retired for those particular issues. I've got one that would put your eyes out, that's 2 pages, back and forth, same size. It shows every payment that's estimated for the next, well, some of them go out to 2052, 54. I hope not to be involved at that point. Again, now when you, the other thing to remember is by the time you get into 23, 25, 27, general obligation bonds, estimating them is really a crapshoot. You really don't have a clue. Will you still be collecting trash, or will you have privatized solid waste? I don't say that to make the citizens crazy, but there are questions that come up. You don't know whether you're going to have, will Sanderson Street still be an office building? Will you have built something else? Will you build a new town hall, because that's starting to fall apart? So these are all things that have to be considered. But this is to give you a bookmark idea and to give you some parameters as to what you need to stay with. The other thing that you see is that this is all going away. This is not, it's clearer on this. Look at the way the debt declines, these green lines. I think there's all kinds of information on this form. But the green lines show you how the debt is declining, and that's how you structure new debt. As the old debt declines, you try to structure new debt so that you don't have this going on, that you've got this, maybe a little bit of a bump, or maybe a little bit of a sag somewhere. So that's basically what the idea is in this bonded debt. Some of the other questions we had were, well, I don't know, maybe Councilor Mass wants to ask the questions, but again, add all bonded debt bans and authorized unspent. Do you still anticipate expending what would the total debt as a percentage of our operating budget? How does that fit within 5 to 10%? As I said, authorized and unissued and bans are not, authorized and unissued become bonded debt. That's what you have to remember.
Councilor Dolan?
So the bans that we currently have on the books are rolled into the red line on our chart here, the general bond issue fiscal year 19.
Yes.
So
Yes,
that's included.
The bans, yeah, they're the ones that are in the general bond issue for 19.
Okay.
Right.
Questions? Councilor Mass?
Mr. Smith, one of the I'm sure you're familiar with the responses that we got from Acting Director Kelly. Are you familiar with the responses she sent to us? Yeah. One of the responses she sent to us indicated that the reason why the deficits that are in bonding that are coming before us next month were not budgeted for in the budget was the decision to make to temporary borrow for a second year rather than to bond was made after the budget books were printed. My question for you is, the mayor sent us several corrections to the budget book, particularly in areas where there were proposed cuts. Why didn't he send us a correction on this when he had the information and we did not?
Well,
that is, why didn't we know about it until
he's asking
till after we passed the budget?
You're asking Mark Smith, but
Well, you here, Director
well,
Kelly.
I'm not here, but I'm going to just make one comment. There was conversation about coming back for a supplemental budget, which in effect is what we're doing. So making corrections. You're right. I wasn't there. I wasn't there, and I suspect that if I had been there, at least the conversation would have been clearer. but, and I don't mean to point fingers at anybody, but there are people who are experts in debt and there are others who aren't, so.
I appreciate that. I'm asking the people who presented the corrections to us, you were there for the corrections. Why didn't we get the corrections for this if the information was known by the executive, but they just chose not to tell us?
That's a question I can't answer at this time, Councilman.
Can you get that answer before the next meeting?
I'll follow up with you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No. Any other reports from?
That was easy. We do have more of these if anybody wants to,
Okay.
wants to have some wallpaper.
Any other reports from the mayor's office or finance or? No. Okay.
Well, yes, actually, yes, I would like to report a few things, because I actually didn't get a chance to speak to you in September, although I did send you some information. Cash is reconciled all but for 2 months now. It was done actually within about 4 weeks. I would say by the end of September, it was at that point, and then because of vacations and some other pressing items, we put it aside. Cash will be reconciled, I suspect, fully by the end of this month, perhaps the first week of November. Receivables, we seem to have run into some issues with the conversion to the new software. I was not here for that either, so I can't speak to that very well, except to say we're looking at entries that have no correlation to anything anywhere in the old system, and we don't know what they are in the new system. So that's going to take some work. This, again, this is not the end of the world. This is not an indictment of the executive. These things happen. The only thing I'll say about reconciliation is if you don't reconcile for a whole year, which went on in 17, it is most unusual not to reconcile for another year, and that's what went on in 18. So clearly there were issues, but regardless of what they were, we're fixing them. The receivables, as I said, they're a little bit bumpy, but we expect to have those done also. And the closing of the books, final carryovers, closing out of 18, final transfers and things of that nature, I suspect will take place between the first and third week of November, and possibly we'll get it closed out by the 1st of December. I will not be here, but you have a very, very fine accounting department staff. The assistant accountant has taken upon herself to work with the treasurer to reconcile cash and has done a yeoman's job. The treasurer is working very hard on the receivables and is also doing a yeoman's job. So again, I stress to you that while it is unfortunate that we don't have a finance director accountant at this time, life goes on, business goes on. The business of the council has to go on. And I think that perhaps this will all pass, and if you can get a new finance director, which I believe is imminent, if we have the money, then I believe that you'll be pleasantly surprised with how fast things can get wrapped up and you can move into the other next half of the fiscal year.
Councilor Dolan?
Thank you very much. I just have a quick question for Mr. Smith before we wrap up, and maybe you'll know the answer to this and maybe not. A lot of hay is being made about the council's cuts to the health department, and I'm absolutely in agreement that what's happening there is untenable. But looking at this chart that was provided, there's still $150,000 in that budget, and there's a director position that's been unfilled that, to my recollection, was not affected by those cuts. Is that position posted, or are there other posted positions in the health department?
Currently, as to my understanding of our budget, the current dollars that we have available now will pay for a health clerk, part-time public health nurse, and 1 inspector. That's our current budgetary, is to stay within under the budget line. And so what we're trying to do is figure out the best solution to staff that office and provide the services to Greenfield. The information you have there was provided by the chairman of the board. We plan on putting together some information for the council prior to the second reading. So we have enough information so you as a council can make a good determination, the direction, what's in the best direction for the health department. Because ultimately, some of you know, in the absence of when Nicole left, I was a liaison, to work with the staff. Then after the termination of the next director, again, I was a liaison working with the staff as I am now. So it does impact what I do too, because I want to see that we're providing the services to the town, but we need your involvement, obviously, because you're the body that's got to appropriate the dollars. So I want to ensure that we give you the information and the data that is transparent, but also accurate about what is the need for the town of Greenfield. I just want to say one last thing too. A couple of councils asked me about, working for the town. As you know, I've been working for the town, almost 2 years, and it's been a really experience, because I came right during the GSET time, but I've developed good relationships with all of you, and I appreciate that. But one of the things I want to try to, for the remainder of what my time is with the town, is try to keep personalities out of the information. It's hard, I'm guilty of it myself at times. So I'm going to ensure that, and it's something I have promised even the former employees of the health department, who I still have relationships with, that I'm going to ensure that I give information to you, that you make the final decision, and then we move forward. I'm not going to try to give you misinformation, hold back anything, but I want to do something that's right, so we do have a vibrant health department, or inspections department. That also includes building, because I stand that it's not just about, it's about health and welfare and safety, but it is economic development too. So, and then going back to Councilor Mass, it's not that I can't answer the question today, but I do want to avoid, as you know, previous he said, she said, and all that, and try to get information that's accurate to you. And what, I don't want to say Director Kelly, I want to say Lane, because Lane is retired. But what Lane is helpful is that because of her experience in debt, and at that time, we're trying to get the budget to you, and there was just certain factors that played into it. I know more about debt than I thought I would ever know now, so I will be more, so I will be more equipped to give you the answers that you all need regarding your questions. So I'm not trying to avoid it tonight. I just want to make sure I do it accurately, because I think you all know that I try to give information that is based on fact and not based on anything else, because I'm not aspiring to be anything else but just do this job. When I'm talking right now, my sciatic pain has gone away.
Thank you.
Councilor Ellis?
Actually, I have a question. My question is, it actually goes back to the debt, so sorry if we're going back that direction. For the treasurer, was there a directive not to bond the debt, or what transpired? I'm just curious what transpired that the bond did not get issued. And I know you were here, so that's why I'm asking.
I was here. All I can tell you is that I was instructed by my former supervisor that we were not bonding. I was not part of any meeting or anything else that occurred to make that decision. Which actually is, I wish I was part of those meetings, because I may have imparted some other wisdom upon what took place if I had been there, but unfortunately I wasn't. I was never asked to attend.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to call up the school superintendent now. So, yeah, here.
Thank you, guys.
You. Superintendent and school committee chair. There is no GSET tonight, in case anybody was wondering.
Hi, everyone. The report from the school committee is quite brief today. For various reasons, our membership needed a little bit of a break this past month or so. So some of our subcommittees and a special meeting was canceled for good reason. However, our work continued on, and we have been very closely overseeing the FY19 budget and any modifications that may occur there. And before you know it, we'll be starting discussion on FY20. As well, we have a special meeting that is scheduled for Monday, October 29th. I believe that meeting will be at 5 p.m., but that hasn't been set yet. And we will be specifically discussing superintendent goals for this school year. In short time, we will begin negotiation with Unit A, our teachers, and Unit C, our instructional assistants. And at the subcommittee level, we look forward to continued deliberation on the use of the Green River School building and the Green River School programming set to be in place at the Green River School building. As well, the Attorney General has put forward a model template for a school resource officer memorandum of understanding. So our committee will begin a review of our current school resource officer MOU, utilizing the Attorney General tool in that discussion. That's all I have for you at this time. I'll yield to the superintendent.
Good evening, counselors.
Good
I
evening.
have a few brief updates for you. One is an ongoing initiative which we've spoken about before, but for those that are listening at home, we want to make sure that folks in the community know that we're continuing to implement a new technology which will improve our communications. This is the school messenger rollout, and we have appreciated folks' patience as we work towards this. There is still a step for some parents to do, and they need to log into their parent portal accounts, and we're providing step-by-step instructions, and we're in the process of making a quick guide video to make sure that parents can take that small step that gives them full access to all of our communications, which includes both emergency but also non-emergency, in other words, outreach communication in up to 70 languages. And this is text and email and phone. So we want to make sure that they do take that small step so that they can access all of those communications. And we certainly appreciate the support of teachers in the community and parents as they've taken this step. There was a Math Mania night at Newton School just last week. If any of you were able to attend, this was a very successful focus on mathematics in a hands-on project-based way. We know that students learn best when they have a chance to interact with what they're learning in a way that's memorable. And Newton School was able to take advantage of that, had a great event last week. We do have several upcoming events that I would like to make folks aware of. On Thursday, October 25th and Friday, October 26th, we do have early release days, K through 12, and we do have open houses on that Thursday, the 25th. We're using a different schedule this year. It will be 5 to 6:30 at the elementary and middle, and 6 to 7:30 at the high school. So it's a staggered open house, so hopefully families with younger and older children can go from one to the other, and we are looking forward to having all families in the district participate in those open houses. A few other events, put this in your date book, please. This Friday at Four Corners, we have the Harvest Sampler. It's from 5 to 6 p.m. And right here in GHS, you can make a wonderful evening for free in downtown Greenfield. Come to the Book to Movie Club, 6 p.m., free popcorn, free showing. This particular one is Black Panther. The children have a opportunity to discuss the book during their lunch hour and have events and discussion around a series of films and books, and then they have the showing in the evening. But this event in the evening is open to the community. We hope people will take advantage. All of the information, as always, is online. You can find out more. You can subscribe for alerts. And on November 6th, because we have an election, we have no school and a teacher in service day. So we hope everyone gets out and votes. And in just a few short weeks, both myself and the chair hope to participate in the Rag Shag Parade. Hope many of you will also be there. And in closing, I will say our field hockey team is also off to an excellent start with a recent win against Frontier, which we always like to celebrate. If there are any questions, we'd be happy to take them.
Counselor Sund.
Yes, I was talking to one of the janitors who I personally know. And he was saying something about graffiti in the bathrooms at the middle school. And I was wondering if you knew about it.
I do.
Okay, I just want to make sure because this janitor is very good, so.
I had a conversation with the principal today about it, and I think, like many things, it's important to keep an eye on and address behavior so we have a positive culture where students are respecting the buildings that we are working in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Counselor Stemple.
Not so much a question, but a kudos. I heard your acquisition campaign ads on the radio. Wonderful idea, and it's nice to get to know the people behind the mask. I particularly heard the teaching assistant ad, and I just thought it was wonderful. So whoever's idea that was, coming from a marketing person, well done.
That means a lot coming from you, and I will say that we have made a real initiative to make the community aware of the types of positions that we have and the kinds of folks that we're looking to fill them. We have really great teaching staff and support staff in our schools, and we want people that might be interested in those kinds of positions to know a little bit more about it. So thank you.
It was also it was nice just to hear their voices, so it could also double as like a get to know who's working with your students too, so it was wonderful.
I believe Kelly Trink and Andy Rook were featured on that spot that you're talking about. We have other spots, including several other teachers, including Angela Mast did a spot, so we have a few others that are coming out too. Thanks.
Counselor Mass?
Not going to say anything about radio ads. I do have two questions. Both are sort of old business. One is sort of been a popular refrain from me, and I anticipate for the next 14 months at least that I'm on this council, I'm going to ask this question every month until I have a specific answer. When can we anticipate a order for PA systems for our elementaries, wired or wireless, whichever method? When will we see that?
I think this is a question that we have been working hard to coordinate. At our recent town school meeting, this was a topic that came up again. We have worked on our school side to try to bring forward the updated quotes, so we have all the updated quotes to bring that forward to the council. This is, as you're aware, a very high priority need. So in my way of thinking, it's a matter of coordinating that information to get it before the council.
Do you think we'll see that before this year's capital budget or in this year's capital budget?
I would hope before. As you know, the school committee and superintendent can't place that before the council, so we need to coordinate.
I certainly understand that. I'm just trying to get an idea. And my last question is, should the council choose to have an executive session next month, would it be possible to get an update on the status of the FBI probe?
I believe so.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody want to comment? The public comment, I mean, the public hearing is still open, but I'm about to close it. All right, seeing none, going to close the public hearing at approximately 8:23. Motions, orders, and resolutions. Vice President Ricketts.
The Town Council move that it be ordered that the Greenfield Town Council, pursuant to Charter Section 2-10, accepts the following appointment by the Mayor of Christopher Joseph to the Franklin County Technical School Board.
Motion's been made and seconded. Report from committee.
Okay, and this was unanimous positive.
Any conversation? Any comments? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Counselor Stemple.
The Town Council, upon recommendation of the mayor, move that it be ordered the council authorizes the payment of a bill from FY18 from the FY19 Human Resource budget in the amount of $142.30.
Motion's been made and seconded. Report from committee.
At the time that this vote was taken for committee, we had 3 members present, and this vote was a unanimous positive. Basically, the nature of this payment is we are legally required to pay this. So it's within our purview and a good idea to move forward and pay this. And it is typical and standard practice to pay from the current FY budget.
Councilor Mass?
I guess my question is, the information I got in the responses from the interim finance director was that the policy was not followed in filing this request. So how are we legally obligated to pay it if the policy was not followed?
Temporary Finance Director Kelly?
That question is, for me, was for my colleagues on the council, what they thought their understanding was.
Sorry, but I think you misquoted me, sir, so that's why I'm standing up. I did not say that this particular bill for $142.79, that nothing policy-wise was followed. It was sent to the wrong department, and it just didn't get back down to HR until September.
So that was
not any kind of
that was the next item?
$1,900 one, there is some question.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Does that clarify?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstain? Motion, wait a second, this has to be 9. I heard, it has to be 12. Let me ask for a roll call vote, just I want to be absolutely positive.
Counselor Sund? Yes. Counselor Lovick? Yes. Counselor Alice? Abstain. Counselor Pifram? Yes. Counselor Dolan? Yes. Counselor Gilmore? Yes. Counselor Wheeler? Yes. Counselor Mayo?
Yes.
Counselor Lanovich?
Yes.
Counselor Mass? No. Does the president wish to vote?
Yes.
Vice President Ricketts?
Yes.
Counselor Stemple?
Yes.
It passes.
I don't.
Motion
appreciate-
carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Stemple.
Anyway, the town council, upon recommendation of the mayor, move that it be ordered the sum of $1,978.90 be appropriated from the reserve fund to pay bills from previous fiscal year.
Motion's been made and seconded. Report from committee, please.
This was also a unanimous positive vote. Our understanding was it was a similar situation. We all just have to kind of understand that we are in a balancing situation as we move forward to be successful in this FY 19 year. And so I will be curious to hear what Councilor Mass has to say about this.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstain? Okay, this is only a majority. Okay, it passes. Thank you. Councilor Stemple.
Let me just make sure. 28. All right, everybody, we are on page 58. The town council, upon recommendation of the mayor, move that it be ordered the sum of $28,357 be appropriated from the compensated absences fund 8450 to fund buybacks for unused vacation personal sick time as provided by contract.
Is it second? Second made. Motion's been made and seconded. Yes, Councilor Mass.
My understanding is that this motion was withdrawn by the executive, that we didn't have to vote on it. Is that incorrect?
That is incorrect.
Councilor Alice.
It wasn't withdrawn. The question was, did we have to vote on it? The answer to that is we don't have to vote on it. This was provided to us as a mechanism of openness.
And I'd like to provide the the committee report, if that's okay. So we did vote on this in committee to acknowledge that this was an effort of good faith and openness and transparency. And so report from committee, 3 positive and 2 abstentions. Whereas Councilor Alice said that we don't necessarily have to vote on this as a full council, but it's the effort to make sure that we have the information and, yeah.
Councilor Alice?
Yeah, our vote on this, doesn't matter how we vote, that can just happen. They can do this. They have the authority, the executive has the authority to do this, which is why I abstained from the vote.
Councilor Mass?
I'm concerned. I'm concerned that we're getting motions that are sent to us in the form of motions, because the motions are prepared by the executive and sent to us for items that we don't need to vote on, and that we have already appropriated the funds for. And it's a concern. The concern to me is that someone is not watching the ball somewhere along the line, making a decision: was this appropriate? Wasn't it not? Do we need authority to do this? Do we not need authority? And information can be sent to us all the time. I'm all for transparency. I'm all for giving information to the council, making sure we know what's going on. But I have a concern because theoretically it's possible we could vote no on this. And then we have 2 contradictory appropriations before the executive. I also don't know, this says to be, I also don't know that this says an appropriation from contract stabilization. We appropriate things to contract stabilization fund, not from them. And so, I'm sorry, no, I apologize. I mean, from the compensated absences fund, not to, we appropriate to that fund. We don't appropriate from that fund unless we're doing an interdepartmental transfer. I think it's a really bad idea to take a vote on something that is not, that we have either no power or authority to vote on, or which we, is a null vote. And you really should think, if we vote no, what does that mean, right? And so I would suggest that we table this indefinitely. They already have the authority to do it, and that we do things the right way. And so I'd move to table it this time.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Could you raise your hand as the opposed, please? Okay, the tabling motion passes. Councilor Stemple?
The town council, upon recommendation of the mayor, move that it be ordered the sum of $23,670 be appropriated from the contractual stabilization fund to fund provisions of termination as provided by contract.
Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Report from committee.
This was a 2 positive and a 3 no. I think we just had differences of opinion as to what fund this amount should derive from.
Does anybody else from Ways and Means want to chime in? So we kind of get a perspective of where folks are coming from. Councilor Alice.
You can call me whatever you want. I was one of the no votes. I voted no to it coming from contractual stabilization because this particular sum of money was completely foreseen that we would have to spend it. And I believe the money should come from the department in which the contract was from, which is the accounting department, which currently has, well, actually, we talked about a number in Ways and Means, which I now, I just realized is actually more than what we talked about because the last motion that we tabled, however, will still go forward because that is the purview of the executive, adds back in the negative amount that's in that budget. So basically, I believe this money should come from the accounting department, which, if I can find it here, yes, it had 50,429.22. I'm sorry, that's the balance. In the wage line, it has $54,888.24. However, the negative balance was the $10,494.02, which is going to be put back in, which then increases that 54,000 by the 10,494. So the money is in that budget. I believe, well, there's quite a few things that I think I could only say in executive session if we have it next month regarding what the executive session may be about. So I can't say much more, but I'm voting no so that this money can either come from that or it can come from another source of funds within the budget. There are a couple places in the budget that I believe money could be transferred interdepartmentally from one to another. So I'm voting no.
Counselor Mass.
Oh, can I present the other side?
I'm sorry, Counselor Stemple.
I was in the positive vote simply because I did believe that it's a purpose like this that the contractual stabilization fund exists. We could not have anticipated the falling out of the finance accounting director as we have now experienced. And so that's for the what ifs, the things you can't plan for. That's the rainy day fund, for a lack of a better word. I know that some people are going to scoff at that, but that was a rainy day and we're still dealing with it. I'm just not sure that spending our departmental budgets into the pennies is the right way to budget. And it sounds like that's what we're suggesting that we do. The other suggestion was that we move money that has been found in other departments into this other departmental budget in order to leave money in order to hire somebody in the future. And it just seems like bad and poor planning when poor and bad planning has gotten us to this point thus far. Let's be smart about where we're getting the money from. Let's use these funds the way that they're intended to be used. Let's not drag this budget down into in a case where we have to have emergency meetings in order to put money back into it. That's all.
Thank you. Counselor Mass.
So as I look at this appropriation, a couple things strike me from the facts. If you look at what we received from the interim director about trend in stabilization, you'll see our trend in stabilization over the last 3 years is a declining stabilization. And we are now below the point where we would ideally like to be for stabilization as a total. And we have no estimates of what free cash is going to be this year, what that's going to be, what we're going to be able to appropriate. There's a lot proposed to come out of stabilization next month for ordinary operating costs. This particular item, I couldn't disagree more heartily, is not what contractual stabilization was set up for. Contractual stabilization was not set up for severance packages or termination. Contractual stabilization is specifically set up for the settlement of contracts. And we are about to have the settlement of a contract in our next appropriation, which is Unit B of the police union. However, that will be the only contract in the entire city of Greenfield which is settled. Every other contract for every other union, for every other employee is unsettled. And I would dare say many non-unionized employees have unsettled contracts. And so it is incumbent on us to be careful about taking care of our employees that we continue to have and ensuring that there's adequate stabilization for the settlement of those contracts. And that's why I cannot vote for it from this source.
Counselor Stemple.
I just want to not go too far back in history here, but with all due respect, the crises that we're talking about right now, and for the reasoning of not withdrawing funds for this purpose from a stabilization account due to we have lowering and decreasing stabilization funds, frankly, and I'm not going to say the counselor's name, but we have colleagues on this council who, through the past 2 years of budgeting cycles, have presented amendments that put us in this very position of crises and lowering stabilization accounts. That's all I'm going to say. And so just because we have lowering in our stabilization accounts doesn't mean that we shouldn't be using it for stabilizing departments due to contractual agreements.
Are there any other comments? A counselor has left, and this is a 9-vote requirement. So, does anybody really, you don't have anything else to say? Okay, there we go. Counselor Mass.
Always given the opportunity to say one other thing, I will, and that is that we got a big lecture on debt and bonding, and we are about to make a major bonding, and the number one, not the number one, but one of the largest things that is reviewed in setting our bond rating is the amount of stabilization. So the declining stabilization, which doesn't come from cutting, but comes from spending, is a major factor in what the cost is going to be for us to do that bonding in the future. And whatever the additional cost is money that's not available for operating budget, including the settlement of contracts.
One thing I would like to say is, I hear everybody's point, but this is a sum of money that is owed to a former employee, and I would like that employee to have this money as soon as possible. And I don't want us not voting on it to drag out the amount of time that this employee gets the money that is coming to her. Counselor Alice?
Just a point of clarification, the employee has already been paid. The employee has the money. So this employee, received this pay in accordance with Mass state law, which is that she has to receive it.
Okay, so we're just refunding the
the
account.
money's been spent.
Okay.
So, and in theory, the money should have been spent from the department that the issue happened in. So that's where my argument is.
Okay, so my argument was, I guess it's not valid. She was paid. So we don't have to be concerned about that. Counselor Gilmore?
I just have a question. Do we have the authority to amend this to say what department or what fund it should be coming from? Because I thought we just either voted for part of it, or just didn't vote for it at all.
Counselor Ellis?
If this fails, the mayor has he doesn't have to take it from the accounting department. He can take it from any place that he can find it, as long as if it comes between departments, it has to come back to us. But if it's out of the department that it happened in, he can just spend it. He can just credit it to that department.
Counselor Gilmore?
More specifically, could we amend it and say we want it to come from X, Y, or Z fund?
No. Okay. We ready to vote? I think we should do a roll call because it's a 9-person vote.
Counselor Sun? No. Counselor Lovick? No. Counselor Alice? No. Counselor Pyfrom? No. Counselor Dolan? Yes. Counselor Gilmore? Yes. Counselor Wheeler?
Yes.
Counselor Mayo?
Yes.
Counselor Linovich?
No.
Counselor Mass?
No.
Does the president wish to vote?
No, it fails.
Counselor Ricketts? Yes. Counselor Stemple?
It fails. It fails. Motion fails. Counselor Stemple?
The town council, upon recommendation of the mayor, ordered that the sum of not to exceed $43,000 be appropriated from the contractual stabilization fund to fund retroactive wage provisions of a new contract agreement with Unit B of the police union.
Motion's been made and seconded. Report from committee.
This was a unanimous positive with a caveat. So we voted for the full amount of 43,000 with the understanding that we will be receiving an additional, what's the word? Motion? Allocation. Well, a supplemental, there we go, that's the word. That we will be seeking they will be submitting a supplemental motion for $2,000 because this is actually not the correct amount. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's all right.
My brain is just fried. So does that make sense, or should I repeat myself?
Could you please repeat yourself?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
So this was a unanimous positive from our committee, with the caveat of the information known that this $43,000 is not sufficient to fulfill this contractual agreement. Math. So we will be receiving a supplemental motion for $2,000 next month. If that makes sense.
Okay. Councilor Alice?
Yeah, we likely will. They may be able to fund it from the department. It's possible that could happen, but it's likely that they'll send us a supplemental order. I'll just speak to the actual order. As I said at Ways and Means, I was glad to have the contract forward, or the the information on what the changes in the contract were, so that I knew what I was voting on. And I've said that almost every time we've received a contract that I wanted to see it before I voted for it. Because just a little bit of background for those on the council, and I don't know if you know this, multi-year contracts, if you get a multi-year contract and you vote for the first year of the contract to fund it, you are, in essence, binding yourself to all 3 years or all multiple years of the contract. So in the past, we as the council, not this council, but the past councils, in some cases would be asked to vote on contracts with just the dollar amount, not knowing what the actual guts of the contract were. And I don't want to see it because I think I would want to change it, but I want to see it so that I know if it's reasonable what the amount of money is for. And on this one, after having seen what's in it, this seems like a reasonable amount of money, which is why I voted in favor of it at Ways and Means. So I'll vote in favor of it here.
Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Councilor Gilmore, could you look on page 71 and please read this motion?
The Town Council moved that it be ordered that the Greenfield Town Council votes to approve the formation of the Greenfield Affordable Housing Partnership Committee, an ad hoc committee for the purpose of creating and effectuating the availability of affordable housing in the town of Greenfield. The committee will comprise of 2 town councilors, 2 representatives from nonprofits who work on housing issues, 3 concerned citizens with relevant experience, 2 members from zoning, planning, or planning and construction committee. The president will choose the members of the committee, including the chairperson.
Motion's been made and seconded. So this was, I'll just speak because it's the motion I made. I mean, I didn't make the motion, but I wrote this up. The reason why I thought it was important to put an ad hoc committee such as this in place is because what we saw this summer with the homelessness on the town common. I think issues came to light that not only do we not have enough room in shelters, but we don't have enough affordable housing. We have housing stock. We have, we don't go below the state average. I don't believe in the amount of available housing stock, but the question is affordable housing. And we have many different entities out there, including Greenfield Housing Authority, other groups that are creating housing, but it would be nice to have one group that can kind of put a compendium together of who's working on affordable housing issues, how the master plan recommendations for affordable housing are being followed. When we think of something like co-housing, that was one of the recommendations made, as well as the ADU, which we already did, but there are a couple other recommendations there from the master planning committee. So if we had this one committee where people, and especially people on zoning and planning, were brought in to the mix, they could report back to us. They could be, work in an organized way. They don't have to exist forever, but we can get a process started, whereas we know, we get to know if there's any steps we need to take to help create affordable housing. And I feel like this was the best way to do it, and to have council representatives on it who could then be sitting right here and report back to us on it. Councilor Alice?
Forgive me because I don't remember. Does it require a vote from us for you to create an ad hoc committee, or can you just do it on your own? And this is just sort of, you want to get a feeling of the council. I'm not sure. I'm asking the question because I don't know the answer.
The clerk and I went through this, and we think that I can actually do it, but I'd rather have support of the town council, and I'd like to have town councilors want to be involved as well.
So this vote is more of a affirmation of your committee? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Councilor Sun?
Yes, I was talking to a couple of citizens about this, because they were talking about what happened on the common, and they wanted me to say, to let people know that there's places around that the homeless could possibly rent or stay in, or for work it out, and to put that out there for them to look at, and possibly help them to find some place to live, and do errands, or just work at it and have the rent that way.
And thank you, Councilor Sun. I mean, that's exactly the kind of information we would want in one compendium, so that, we could help folks and just create more affordable housing. Or if if there's something like that out there, to have one place where we have that information. Councilor Mass.
President Reno, a couple items related to the language of this. I know it's going to seem probably a little picayune, but a ad hoc committee of the council doesn't have the power, because the council doesn't have the power to create or effectuate affordable housing. Could we add in the language, and I'd move to amend to add the language prior to, after of, and before creating, make recommendations as to the create, and strike creating and effectuating, and replace with creating and effectuation of.
I take that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. And then if that's a friendly amendment, then I would just move to the second item. I do think that there should be in this the committee to provide a final report no later than a certain date, but I don't have a specific date that's in mind. I just think there should be an end date for them to give us a final report of everything that they've done, so that we can start taking action steps based on that report.
I would say a year. I would, as a friendly amendment, put in a year, and if somebody else would make a friendly amendment to include past members of the zoning, planning, or planning and construction committee, because I think it could be current or past. My fear is that those folks are really busy, and that if we can't find somebody on those boards, we need somebody who used to be on those boards.
I'd make that friendly amendment.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about the committee? Okay, great. All in favor? Opposed, abstain, motion carries. Thank you very much, Town Council. Councilor Gilmore, would you please read the warrant for state election November 6, 2018 on page 73? You have to read the entire thing, Councilor Gilmore.
You mean flipping over to the next page? Like the next 3 pages. Next,
Oh, wait, should have had Councilor Alice, the speed reader.
The town council moved that it be ordered. Sorry.
No, it's okay, Councilor, yeah.
Okay. The Greenfield Town Council hereby approves the attached state election warrant for November 6, 2018, and further authorizes the town council president to sign said warrant on behalf of the town council. To the constables of the city, town of Greenfield, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth, you are hereby required to notify and warn the inhabitants of said city or town who are qualified to vote in the state election to vote at Greenfield High School Gymnasium, 21 Bar Avenue, precincts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, on Tuesday, the 6th day of November, 2018, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. for the following purposes: to cast their votes in the state election for the candidates in the following offices and questions: Senator in Congress for this Commonwealth, Governor and Lieutenant Governor for this Commonwealth, Attorney General for this Commonwealth, Secretary of State for this Commonwealth, Treasurer and Receiver General for this Commonwealth, Auditor for this Commonwealth, Representative in Congress, 2nd District, Counselor, 8th District, Senator in General Court, Hampshire, Franklin, Worcester District, Representative in General Court, 2nd Berkshire District, District Attorney, Northwestern District, Clerk of Courts, Franklin County, Register of Deeds, Franklin County, Council of Government Executive Committee, Franklin County. Question 1, law proposed by initiative petition. Do you approve of a law summarized below on which no vote was taken by the Senate or the House of Representatives on or before May 2nd, 2018? Summary: this proposed law would limit how many patients could be assigned to each registered nurse in Massachusetts hospitals and certain other healthcare facilities. The maximum number of patients per registered nurse would vary by type of unit and level of care as follows. In units with step-down intermediate care patients, 3 patients per nurse. In units with post-anesthesia care of operating room patients, 1 patient under anesthesia per nurse, 2 patients post-anesthesia per nurse. In the Emergency Services Department, 1 critical or intensive care patient per nurse, or 2 if the nurse has assessed each patient's condition as stable, 2 urgent non-stable patients per nurse, 3 urgent stable patients per nurse, or 5 non-urgent stable patients per nurse. In units with maternity patients, A, active labor patients, 1 patient per nurse, B, during birth and for up to 2 hours immediately postpartum, 1 mother per nurse and 1 baby per nurse. C, when the condition of the mother and baby are determined to be stable, 1 mother and her baby or babies per nurse. D, postpartum, 6 patients per nurse. E, intermediate care or continuing care babies, 2 babies per nurse. F, well babies, 6 babies per nurse. In units with pediatric medical surgical telemetry or observational outpatient treatment patients or any other unit, 4 patients per nurse. And in units with psychiatric or rehabilitation patients, 5 patients per nurse. The proposed law would require a covered facility to comply with the patient assignment limits without reducing its level of nursing, service, maintenance, clerical, professional, and other staff. The proposed law would also require every covered facility to develop a written patient acuity tool for each unit to evaluate the condition of each patient. This tool would be used by nurses and decided whether patient limits should be lower than the limits of the proposed law at any given time. The proposed law would not override any contract in effect on January 1st, 2019 that set higher patient limits. The proposed law's limits would take effect after any such contract expired. The State Health Policy Commission would be required to promulgate regulations to implement the proposed law. The Commission would conduct inspections to ensure compliance with the law. Any facility receiving written notice from the Commission of a complaint or a violation would be required to submit a written compliance plan to the Commission. The Commission could report violations to the State Attorney General, who could file suit to obtain a civil penalty of up to $25,000 per violation, as well as up to $25,000 for each day a violation continued after the Commission notified the covered facility of the violation. The Health Policy Commission would be required to establish a toll-free telephone number for complaints and a website where complaints, compliance plans, and violations would appear. The proposed law would prohibit discipline or retaliation against any employee for complying with the patient assignments limits of the law. The proposed law would require every covered facility to post within each unit patient room and waiting area notice explaining the patient limits and how to report violations. Each day of a facility's noncompliance with the posting requirement would be punished by civil penalty between $250 and $2,500. The proposed law requirements would be suspended during a state of nationally declared public health emergency. The proposed law states that if any of its parts were declared invalid, the other parts would stay in effect. The proposed law would take effect on January 1st, 2019. A yes vote would limit the number of patients that could be assigned to one registered nurse in hospitals and other certain healthcare facilities. A no vote would make no change in current laws relative to patient to nurse limits. Question 2. Law proposed by initiative petition. Do you approve of a law summarized below on which no vote was taken by the Senate or the House of Representatives on or before May 2nd, 2018? Summary. This proposed law would create a Citizens Commission to consider and recommend potential amendments to the United States Constitution to establish that corporations do not have the same constitutional rights as human beings and that campaign contributions and expenditures may be regulated. Any resident of Massachusetts who is a United States citizen would be able to apply for appointment to the 15-member commission, and members would serve without compensation. The governor, the secretary of the Commonwealth, the state attorney general, the speaker of the state House of Representatives, the president of the state Senate would each appoint 3 members of the commission, and in making these appointments would seek to ensure that the commission reflects a range of geographic, political, and demographic backgrounds. The commission would be required to research and take testimony and then issue a report regarding 1, the impact of political spending in Massachusetts, 2, any limitations on the state's ability to regulate corporations and other entities in light of the Supreme Court decision that allows corporations to assert certain constitutional rights, 3, recommendations for constitutional amendments, 4, an analysis of constitutional amendments introduced to Congress, and 5, recommendations for advancing proposed amendments to the United States Constitution. The commission would be subject to the state open meeting law and public records law. The commission's first report would be due December 31st, 2019, and the Secretary of the Commonwealth would be required to deliver the commission's report to the state legislature, the United States Congress, and the President of the United States. The proposed law states that if any of its parts are declared invalid, the other parts would stay in effect. The proposed law would take effect on January 1st, 2019. A yes vote would create a Citizens Commission to advance an amendment to the United States Constitution, limit the influence of money in elections, and establish that corporations do not have the same rights as human beings. A no vote would not create this commission. Question 3, referendum on an existing law. Do you approve of a law summarized below which was approved by the House of Representatives and the State Senate and the Senate on July 7, 2016? Summary. This law adds gender identity to the list of prohibited grounds of discrimination in places of public accommodation, resort, or amusement. Such grounds also include race, color, religious creed, national origin, sex, disability, and ancestry. A place of public accommodation, resort, or amusement is defined in existing law as any place that is open to and accepts or solicits the patronage of the general public, such as hotels, stores, restaurants, theaters, sports facilities, and hospitals. Gender identity is defined as a person's sincerely held gender-related identity, appearance, or behavior, whether or not it's different from the traditionally associated with the person's physiology or assigned sex at birth. The law prohibits discrimination based on gender identity in a person's admission to or treatment in any place of public accommodation. The law requires any such place that has a separate area for males and females, such as restrooms, to allow access to and full use of those areas consistent with a person's gender identity. The law also prohibits the owner or manager of a place of public accommodation from using advertising or signage that discriminates on the basis of gender identity. This law directs the State Commission Against Discrimination to adopt rules or policy to make recommendations to carry out this law. The law also directs the State Attorney General to issue regulations or guidance or referring to legal action of any person who asserts gender identity or for an improper purpose. The provisions of this law governing access to places of public accommodation are effective as of October 1st, 2016. The remaining provisions are effective as of July 8th, 2016. A yes vote would keep in place the current law which prohibits discrimination on the basis of gender identity in places of public accommodation. A no vote would repeal this provision of the public accommodation law. Question 4. This question is not binding. Shall the state representative from the district be instructed to vote for legislation to create a single-payer system of universal health care that would provide all Massachusetts residents with comprehensive health care coverage, including the freedom to choose doctors and other health care professionals, facilities, and services, that would eliminate the role of insurance companies in health care by creating a publicly administered insurance trust fund? Hereof fail not in Here fail not, and make return of this warrant with your doings thereon at the time and place of said voting, given under our hands the 17th day of October, 2018.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Thank you very much, Councilor Gilmore. You did a great job. Councilor Alice?
I just need to ask a question. Maybe Kathy, have we always had to read the questions and everything? I don't ever remember having to read something.
I believe
Is it-
recently it was stated that we had to.
Okay, thank
but
you.
I will double check, so we may not have to go through this again.
Oh, I just wondered. I knew we had to read the whole warrant, but I never remember reading 4-page warrant ever in the history of being here. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's so. It may be Modernization Act. I don't know, but anyway, thank you for answering that.
I'm so glad we have 2 speed readers now. So that doesn't always have to be Councilor Alice. All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion passes. And Vice President Ricketts plastic bag ordinance, page 78.
Okay. The town council move that it be ordered that the town of Greenfield council approves the new ordinance as attached, chapter 343, ordinance prohibiting single-use carry-out bags, which seeks to reduce the number of plastic and paper bags that are being returned, used, discarded, and littered, and to promote the use of reusable carry-out bags by retail establishments located in the town of Greenfield, and further amends the table and index of contents of the code, and further that the non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code, the town of Greenfield.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Report from committee.
Positive unanimous.
Does anybody else want to, well, I guess it's open for comments. Councilor Mass.
So I certainly have some comments about the substance of this, but I just wanted to start with some things that I think are problematic with the drafting of this. I want to make sure that we perhaps address those if this is going to pass. In the enforcement section, there's 2 issues. One talks about an executive director of inspectional services department. We have no such department. I would like us to have such a department. That's what we recommended in the budget, but we currently don't have that, so that should be changed. Also, it says the director of the health commission. We have no health commission. We have a board of health. That probably should be changed. And finally, in the paragraph above, it says that shall be liable for a fine of not more than $300. $300 is the maximum fine allowable for any violation of ordinance under Massachusetts law for a city to impose, but we have to specify what the fine is. Is it $10? Is it $50? Is it $300? You just can't leave broad discretion to the enforcement department, because otherwise you get selective enforcement and your ordinance gets challenged. And I don't want to make a specific propose an amendment to that. I think it should be for the proponents, but I just want to make that clear so that if whatever we passes, it will withstand scrutiny.
Councilor Sund.
A lot of people that I've around town that have seen this has wondered why this is not going before this type is not going before the voters, and the council's going to just make it law. And there's a lot of people that I know that can't even afford to pay. Their budget is so low, they're just paying their rent and their gas and electrical and all that. So, and if you put a fine on the people that are doing this, or tax, or, and one of the people, I was at the meeting, one of the people was saying about trees. well, if they don't want trees cut or anything else, there can't be any houses built anywhere else in the United States, because that's where trees are, your houses are made from trees. And so I just, this is what people have talked to me about after seeing this paper.
Councilor Ellis.
Yeah, I'll be brief. This went to referendum. It was voted on. The outcome was what the outcome was. The only thing that's changed since then is time. And I don't know if the amount of time that passed has changed the mind of the majority of voters. So I feel personally, but I also feel from the constituents that have called me to talk to me about it, they say, we voted on this. And I say, yeah, you voted on it. We voted on it 3 years ago, I believe it was, or maybe it was 3 years? Yeah, 3 years ago. And I can't support passing this when 3 years ago we had something that said we shouldn't. I think if the voters voted to enact this, I would vote for it, because the voters have said we want it, just like I did with the styrofoam. Actually, I think I abstained. But if a vote comes down from a referendum process, I don't vote against that. So I can't vote against that tonight. I think it should go before the voters in a referendum process, even if it's this one. I mean, if it's this one, I think if it passed in a referendum process, I would vote to support it, simply because that's what the majority of the voters have said. So that's my piece. There's other things that I could talk about. I could talk about the fact that anyone who's on food stamps, their EBT does not cover buying reusable bags, doesn't cover paying for 25 cents for a bag. We could talk about all that. But for me, the only real thing that matters on this is that the last direction that I've gotten from the town at large is that we shouldn't have it as a law. So until that changes based on a referendum, I can't vote for it.
Councilor Dolan and then Councilor Pyfron.
We've been through some of these issues in committee and kind of as we've been developing it. With regards to the referendum, I have a couple of comments. Do
you need Councilor Dolan to speak louder? Councilor Dolan, could you speak louder?
I can try, yes.
Okay.
So this went before the voters in 2015, which would have made Greenfield one of the first towns to pass an ordinance like this. Now we will be the 86th in the state. Major cities and the entire state of California have passed similar bans in the meantime. So this has gone from being a fringe progressive act to being more or less mainstream at this point, I believe. I'd also like to point out ballot initiatives like that are the best tool that we have for gauging the will of the people. But I think 40% of the registered voters in Greenfield turned out for that election. We know that older people are much more likely to turn out for elections, particularly at the local level. And the people that this bag waste affects most is not older people. It's going to be the next generation. It's going to be people who are not yet able to vote. So we have a responsibility to think about not only the folks who voted in that referendum, but also the folks who will actually have to deal with this problem down the line. To sum up, I'd just like to point out, in 1918, it was perfectly acceptable to dump raw sewage in the Connecticut River. And if you had asked whether we should ban it at that time, it wouldn't have passed. In 1968, it was perfectly legal and acceptable to dump PCBs in the Housatonic River. And if you had asked whether we should ban that, it wouldn't have passed. This is the issue for our time, or it's a small piece of the issue for our time. Like, this is not, this is the science of pollution. This is the science of injecting things like plastic bags into our environment. And I'm willing to make that move even if it is somewhat unpopular among certain demographics.
Councilor Pyfrom and then Councilor Lobick.
Thank you. Yeah, I was having conversation this morning, and I'm definitely uncomfortable with forcing a decision where the taxpayers, even though it was only 221 more votes to vote against it, I felt comfortable myself voting for it on the ballot, but I don't feel comfortable voting for the people. I don't want to force discipline on anybody in the community. I think it's their right to choose. It should go back on the ballot. Maybe before it goes back on the ballot, if it ever does, I don't know if it pass or fail tonight, but just be more aggressive with the education of the plastic bags. I mean, I see stuff on TV, PBS, on Oceans, and, my husband and I, we have conversation about this all the time. But for me, sitting up here, and I don't feel comfortable. It was a ballot voted decision by the community. It was their vote. And I'm willing to honor that vote, but at least I have the chance to vote in a ballot for myself to vote against it. For it, sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilor Lobick.
Okay. First off, I want to apologize. I didn't mean to disrupt Councilor Dolan. I brought this up at the A&O meeting. I think it was our first meeting on this, and I said it go before the voters. They voted against it the last time, and I don't think it's the council's business to force this on the town of Greenfield. It should go to the voters. I don't care either way. When we go to the supermarket, we use our own bags that we have. But some people can't afford it, some can with no problem. But I don't think we should force this on the townspeople. They should have a right to vote on this like they did before. So.
Are you all set? Okay, so it seems like this all began, I think, the beginning of the spring. I think it was really early on. And I know one of the first things that I said was people voted on this, and I know that I was on council then, and I voted the way that the majority of the people did at the time. And so when it came up again, I wasn't really happy that it came up because I didn't feel like that much time really had passed, but it had been out in the recorder and it was on Channel 22, and the town was knowing that, look, this is coming up again. And I thought about, wow, can I make this decision? And then I've thought about some of the decisions I've made sitting on council, like our community center, where it's not a ballot question, and that was really going to affect taxes. And then the parking garage, where only council voted on that topic, and that was a lot of money, and that again was going to affect taxes. And now here comes the library and perhaps even the public safety, and they're all big dollar items, and it definitely affects people, and none of them are on any ballot. It's the council this year and the last couple of years who have been making the decisions about that. And so I began to feel like I'm confident about making this now because I haven't heard back from people about not wanting it as much. The one thing that I have heard about was the
fee for it. And I know a lot of people have said, you know, when they walk through that door, if they forget it, they'll remember they got to just turn around and go back to their cars. So that's really just a matter of privilege. There's a lot of people that are in our community who take the bus or take the cab, so they're not running back to anything to go get that bag. And I do believe, and I forgot who it was, if it's Council Alice, that says that the tote bags are not going to be covered by EBT. So I am planning on voting for this, but I'm very interested in the effort to donate bags. I have tons of them, the tote bags. And so I like the groups that plan on bringing these to the housing complexes in Elm Terrace and things like that. I know when people were emailing to say, would you please vote yes on this, I had responded back to them and said, but I'm not in favor of the 25-cent paper bag. And they responded back to me saying, well, no, that should be up to the individual stores. So it was interesting that I was getting that feedback from people who really wanted that, but I think there was some different groups, and so that's why. And so this particular groups of people who were all emailing felt like, no, they didn't want that either. So I would like our full council to really be behind this, and I feel like maybe the only way that they could do this is that instead of this going in effect in 1 year, it goes in effect in 2 years. That we make that amendment. So I would like to make the friendly amendment, first of all, to clean up Councilor Mass's thoughts about taking out the director's designee, because we do not have that. And if you want to just remind me of the other one. My
So
eyesight
the
barely sees
director of
microphone.
inspectional service, executive director of inspectional services should just be stricken completely, because it's covered by the director of the Board of Health and director of the Health Department, and director of Health Commission should be replaced with the Board of Health, and then you have to set a fine.
So I would like to make those friendly amendments to Councilor Dolan, Councilor Gilmore, and to the full council. I would like to make the friendly amendment that there's no fee for paper. And I don't feel like when people get that paper, I think the thing that's going to make them remember to bring their tote is when I was growing up and my dad pulled up with all the groceries and they're all paper bags. We were kids, we just hauled them into the houses. But they don't have any handles on them, the paper bags you get in the store. I think that's all that it's gonna need for people to remember their tote bags, even if the bag fits right inside their tote bags. So they don't need a dime or a quarter or anything else as a fine to, because a lot of the people in our community, especially the elderly, they're the ones that are paying for this new high school. And they're paying for the community center. And it looks like everything is going right along with our library. So that's a lot. So when I was even looking into communities who was doing this, and granted, I called some places that were towns, and one place said they charged a dime, another one said it's free. The thing that I have to look at when I'm looking at other places is our infrastructure compared to theirs. All the new things that we have built. We have a new jail, we have a new transportation center, we have a new courthouse. We have all those things. We are paying for quite a bit. And so I just want to see this pass, and I don't know if it would be of comfort to people who say it should be on the ballot, is if it's
effective in 2 years, everyone's on board and it's better, or if it's just going to be a no vote, then we leave it the way it is and it's effective in 1 year and it may pass, but I want to give you the opportunity. That gives you a little bit more time for those residents to understand that it is coming down the pike. So those are a lot of friendly amendments, I know, but yes. Okay, so, right. So does everyone understand what I'm going to do now? So okay, just go ahead, say it. What did you say, Councilor Gilmore?
So Counselor Dolan and I worked on this together, so we both have to, it has to be friendly for both of us. So if we go
Yep.
through one at a time and we can sort of like
Eyeball
send psychic
each other?
mind waves.
Sure. All right, so the first friendly amendment I'd like to make is to remove the Director of Services. I'm pretending I can see what I'm looking at, but
Can I help you, Councilor Ricketts?
Thank you.
I think I have them itemized, and I'll look to you if you have additional. I think Councilor Ricketts' first friendly amendment is to strike the words in the second paragraph of enforcement, the Executive Director of Inspectional Services Department.
yes.
I think Councilor Ricketts' second friendly amendment is to strike Director of the Health Commission and replace with Board of Health. I think her third is to change the implementation from 1 year to 2 years. So that would be non-friendly amendment. I think her fourth was to strike the language about a store may charge for no less than 25 cents for a paper bag. That's not acceptable. And the last one, I wasn't clear on, Councilor Ricketts, was related to the fine. Right now, it says a fine of not more than $300. It needs to be a fine of a specific amount, and I don't think I heard from you what specific amount you proposed.
I don't propose anything, I don't understand it.
So I'll maybe reiterate for councilors, the ordinance has to say what the fine is so that the enforcing authority knows what it is, and it can be any amount from $1, although $1 is hard to get enforcement of because of the cost, up to $300. $300 is generally considered the worst possible offense. That's what we charge for like nuclear waste going through town. It can be anything in between, and it can be so much for the first offense, so much for the second offense. We have a warning for the first offense here. It's up to councilors what they choose, but it just can't be anything that the enforcer wants to charge.
Okay, so with these non-friendly amendments, I think they each need to be made as separate motions to the original amendment, and then we discuss it, and then we vote on the motions to the amendment. So, Councilor Ricketts, I suppose anybody could make the ones that were friendly, those are a done deal. So I think there need to be amendments made to, first, why don't we start with the, when it goes into enforcement. And it sounds like there's an amendment out there, but I can't make it. I mean, technically, I guess I could, but a motion for an amendment to make the effective 2 years from this day. So could somebody make that motion? So we can't discuss it until it's a motion.
President Randall?
I don't have to read anything, so I can make that. I move to amend that this go in effect in 2 years.
Second.
There's been an amendment made for this particular ordinance to go into effect of 2 years, and that would be a change from the 1 year that is currently on it. Is there any discussion? Councilor Stemple?
I don't really have discussion on this. I feel like there wasn't really enough time to discuss the ordinance as it was, so I don't really know what to do with that.
Well, once we go through these motions to amend, we can get back to whatever is left, and then we can discuss the motion. But right now, we're talking about changing the timeline from 1 year to 2 years. That's the discussion on the table right now. Councilor Dolan, did I see your hand up before? Okay. Sorry, I'm not looking over there.
I'm a little hesitant to support 2 years, just because Greenfield has very consciously over the years made an identity out of being a leader on environmental issues. And if this isn't enacted in 2 years, there may be a state law by then banning bags statewide, and we would certainly not be 86th. We would be way at the back of the pack on this, the way that it's moving now. So I would like to offer a friendly amendment to your amendment to 18 months. Can I do a friendly amendment to an amendment? Or does it have to be an amendment to an amendment?
Yeah, you can do an amendment to an amendment, but you can't do any
I'll
more
let
than that.
others discuss before I do that.
Okay. All right, so we're on 18 months now, so that's a year and a half.
I guess, again, I'm only doing this for, I think for my colleagues that are wanting to vote no, to see if I could maybe find some common ground on how this will help all of our constituents. Oh, yes. Okay. Now, would anybody else like to discuss? Yep, Councilor Lobeck,
Yeah,
sorry.
Counselor Ricketts, I'm just wondering, where's this leave the voters in these amendments that we just passed, or didn't pass, but just put forward? Where's this leave the voters? Do they still get to vote on this, or they don't get to vote?
Yeah, yes, this is still not a vote, but it's that much time, because if it passes
Well,
tonight, it's just,
You're talking a year and a half, right? And after a year and a half, this goes through. And the voters don't get to vote on it. They do?
unless somebody,
can't-
unless
I
it
can't
comes
vote.
forward as a
I can't vote for
question.
it then.
Counselor Gilmore.
Yeah, so people brought up voters frequently, but Councilor Dolan and I were both overwhelmingly elected in our precincts, and the residents in our precincts pushed us, and they said, we want you to do this immediately. And it took us a couple of months to, really get started on it, but they elected us specifically to do this.
Counselor Mass.
First of all, I appreciate the efforts of Councilor Dolan and Councilor Gilmore. I do think the constituents of your respective precincts are overwhelmingly in favor of it. I think the constituents of almost everyone else's precincts are are more lopsided. That's why it came out close. The other way. That said, it was a non-binding referendum. 18 months is better than 1 year because it gives the voters an opportunity to vote out all of us the people who vote for this, if they don't like it, and then new counselor, well, not all of us, but half of us, anyhow, and possibly an opportunity to vote in. 2 years would be better because you get an opportunity to really move most people, but 18 months is better than a year.
Everyone's, Counselor Sun. So everybody's hands are up by their mouth. I couldn't tell who's.
Yeah, I just wondered why the two people that brought this forward don't want the rest of town to have an input on it. What their, how come they don't want it to go on the ballot? And, it just...
Point of order, President.
Counselor Mass.
Ricketts. I believe we're talking about the amendment. I think Counselor Sun's comments are perfectly reasonable and his questions are perfectly reasonable for the main question, but we need to deal with the amendment first.
Is there any more discussion? So we're voting for the 18 months? All right, so we're going to vote on the 18 months. So if we vote that up or down, if we vote it down, we just move on. You still will have a chance, Counselor Sun, to ask your question. So did you want to do roll call, or you just want me to just call for a vote? Okay. All those in favor of 18 months, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
Did you get that? Okay, can you raise your hand for no, please?
Are you a no?
See, I can't tell. Good, I can't tell.
So this is hands up for no.
Wait.
Sorry.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 no.
Okay, so the amendment
So it
passes.
Did anyone abstain?
Did anyone abstain? No. Okay, so the amendment passed, so now it is 18 months. And then the next big thing that we need so the new motion, the whole motion on the table is as is with the friendly amendments, but it does not go into effect for 18 months. But now we have a couple other amendments that need to be made, and one has to do with the fine. Currently, it says a fine of not more than $300, so we need an amendment to actually put forward an actual fine. Councilor Dolan.
I would like to make an amendment, make a motion that we change $300 to a very business-friendly $50.
Point of clarification. Is Councilor Dolan's amendment to just change the figure of 300 to 50, or is it to change not more than 300 to $50?
The latter. Thank you.
Okay, and motion's been made and seconded by Vice President Ricketts. Is there any? No, it doesn't matter. No. So does anybody want to discuss just the $50, the $50 fine? Councilor Sun?
I want to know why there has to be any fine at all. You know, the only thing, you know, no matter what kind of bag you have, you'd have to, you know, it's just I can't see you having a fine put on and for people with plastic or paper bags. You know, that's just, it's hard enough paying your taxes, not having to find, you know, if you don't have money for a paper bag or plastic bag, unless these people that are putting this forward are willing to hand out these bags for those that can't afford it.
Councilor Sun, I think I can answer your question. There's the fine would be on the businesses, otherwise there wouldn't be a reason to comply. There has to be some kind of incentive to comply, so that's the reason for the fine. I believe, I cannot remember, don't have the memory of an elephant, or I don't know, I think elephants have really long memories, but I think there is a fine also with the styrofoam. Otherwise, there would have been no incentive, and I wouldn't have this lovely non-styrofoam cup from Dunkin' Donuts because of the ordinance that we enacted. So that's the purpose behind the fine. Good question. Councilor Alice?
Could I ask a question? I've read it, and I'm not sure if I know the answer to my question. In the event that someone has plastic bags, can they use plastic bags, or is that a violation of this? For example, if a customer brings plastic bags to use, is that a violation? That's not a okay, because it wasn't the last one, so not the last one you had, but in the last one that was proposed, that was a violation. So I'm just trying to be clear. I couldn't quite, my mind couldn't quite wrap around all of the single-use definitions. So thank you for.
May I?
Councilor Dolan?
Yes, this only applies to a bag given by a store to a customer.
Okay, so one more. In enforcement, where it says whoever violates any provision, is that are both of the, so the first one says any retail establishment, and then the other one says whoever violates. Is the whoever the retail establishments and the businesses, or is there a time where a person could be fined for doing something under this ordinance, like a consumer?
Councilor Gilmore?
So since the crux of the ordinance is that businesses will not give out single-use thin film plastic, it would be impossible for the customer to violate it because the customer is not giving it out. It would be, that they would receive it.
Thank you.
Any other discussion about the $50? So it's about lowering the fine to $50. It's okay. It's getting late. Well, we've gone much later.
It's pretty early, actually.
Still early. Okay. Yes.
Fresh, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to vote on the amendment to lower the fine to retail establishments. So it's going to be lowering the fine to retail establishments from up to $300 to actually just $50. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The amendment carries. So right now, the motion has longer time to put into effect, so it is 18 months, and also the fine has been decreased to $50. I think the last amendment is going to concern the cost of the bag itself if somebody makes that amendment. Councilor Dolan.
I would like to make that amendment. I would like to, where it says 25 cents on the end of page 79, I would like to lower that to 15 cents.
Okay, and do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, the 25-cent figure wasn't pulled out of nowhere. That's kind of from what I can tell, the maximum that a paper bag would cost a very small establishment ordering a very small quantity of bags at a time. So it was somewhere in that area based on my research. That doesn't factor in the money that they're saving on the plastic bag that they would have given in the first place. So by lowering it to 15, I feel like we're approaching the break-even point for businesses, where they will not actually be gaining a new revenue stream at all, but their costs will be, they'll be compensated for the additional cost. I would consider going as low as 10 cents.
I have a question for the authors, and I have to admit I have not attended any of the A&O meetings, so perhaps this has been answered. But either of you could answer this. I guess why would we establish the cost that a retail establishment wants to establish anyhow? Like, why not just let the retail establishment either decide to establish a cost or not to establish a cost? I'm going to let Councilor Gilmore answer.
So when we first started talking about this, I was actually not in favor of charging for paper bags because paper bags are recyclable and they're often recycled when you get them. But I was talking to others who are more knowledgeable about these issues than I am, and they were saying that without the disincentive, you're just trading one bag for another. So you're still creating waste, and then there's really no reason to, sort of kick people in the pants and get them to bring their reusable cloth bags. So I was brought around just because, the shipping is more expensive for those. They still have to cut down the trees for those. Storage is more difficult. So it's really just about, if the goal is to get people to bring cloth, then you have to make a disincentive.
Councilor Dolan?
Just to add on to that, yeah, Councilor Gilmore and I have been back and forth on this several times, and that's eventually what we decided after considering it multiple times. Basically, this is a waste reduction measure, not a waste substitution measure. It's not advocating recycling, it's advocating getting rid of the waste stream, which we think is most important, which is the first level of that hierarchy of solid waste. The other part of it, this is also a personal responsibility measure. I mean, bags are not free, and we in our culture have come to an assumption that when you go into a store, you get a bag for free. But that's not actually true. There's a cost to the retailer, and then there's a much more significant cost for cleanup. So part of what we're doing is breaking that cycle and asking people to pay for something that has a cost. and make that decision consciously. If we don't establish a fee in the ordinance, then there will be pressure on retailers to not charge, because that's what people are used to. Just like was mentioned in the public comment, we get to be the bad cop here. Otherwise, what we're asking businesses to do is give away a more expensive product. And no business would charge if we didn't force them, because that's not the expectation of their customers.
Vice President Ricketts?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your explanation and your work on that. I know I'm thinking back to Matt from Foster's and how he was talking about just the competitive nature. And I know I have tons of friends who go to Market Basket and Athol, but that's because they have time and they can drive. And they have the plastic bag ban, but they don't charge for paper bags. And so what he was trying to say that I got from him was that he knows that he is losing to how many people go out of town to shop. And we already know, as a whole, we have millions of dollar leakage for retail and grocery shopping as it is now. And I just feel that someone like Matt from Foster's and stuff, I just trust them to know their cost and their clientele well enough. Like, I know that they really service Elm Terrace, and I really think letting them decide whether they want to do a nickel or they just want to continue to keep doing paper bags for free, because they are going to save money on all those plastic bags that they're going to cancel that order from. And I really trust these stores to do it. Places like Big Y and Stop and Shop are in towns that also have plastic bag bans. So they already know as a corporate what they're going to do. So I'm not going to spend all night staying awake worrying about them. They got this. So again, I can only go back to the taxpayer because it's who I answer to. I mean, when we work on issues, we're here for the entire town. Like, you notice the people who came, even for plastic bag, or even for the library, and then we started to discuss this and they go, because it is that hard and it is that unnerving. But this is the reality. And this is what people who are watching right now are dealing with. We're going to be discussing in a few short months here whether we're going to go to a split tax rate because of things like this. And so I can't nickel, dime, 15 cents or a quarter things like this when we have these big decisions that are going to be made in the next 6 months. So, and I was prepared. I was prepared for tons of phone calls and tons of emails about do not do this. I think if I had received as many as I thought, this would be a more difficult decision for me. But the one thing that I have come to know about this council is how we have worked together. We don't always agree, and you could always see how votes fall on different things, but things like this are our reality, and we really have a lot to keep in perspective. So when people are talking about the constituents and what they've heard and stuff, I take it personally, and I take it to heart, because they are taking this to heart at the end of the day, and why it's so important for us to understand it and learn it. So I'm still not for this. I will see how my colleagues vote on this. I can't vote for 25 cents or 15 cents or a dime. I really am gonna try to hold my ground on this one thing. But I love the work that went into it, and I give them a lot of credit because, you know, we were all elected
and our constituents wanted certain things from us. And to see two brand-new counselors run with it this quickly and get this on the ball, and we have met a lot. We've brought this up at our A&O meeting month after month. So we've been talking about this for quite a while. As a full council, I wish maybe we talked more and maybe more of our counselors came. I do thank Councilor Mayo and Councilor Sun for coming, to those meetings, even though they don't sit on that board. But it was great to hear their input all along the way as well. And so a lot of things changed, because I was a no on this when I thought it included restaurants. When they took restaurants off the table, that was another thing that helped me. And then I have to praise people like Taylor's Taverns, who have been using paper bags for their to-go food for quite some time. But I really thought about what our downtown restaurants were going to have to do with all those to-go bags, and I was glad to see that come off. So Councilor Dolan and Gilmore have done a tremendous amount of work, and they have taken me from being somebody who went, but the people said this 3 years ago, to me being able to support it because of all the changes that we've been making. And that's why when we began to talk about this, and we were talking about, well, Cambridge does this and this town does that, I wouldn't even hear any of that. I had to call Athol. I had to call places that are more like us. There's lots of poverty here. There's lots of reality. So I know if this passes tonight, my first goal is working on this ban. Now I know I have, working on the totes, because now I know I have 18 months to get as many as I can into the hands of as many people as I can. So no matter how you stand on this, please, you have to give them credit for this. If you could see how much it changed from the beginning till tonight, I should be ashamed to be making more amendments to it. But like I said, I have a whole entire community to answer to. So I thank you so much for all this work.
Councilor Stemple, then Mass.
That was a lot by Councilor Hitt. I was just going to also echo that Franklin County is the poorest community in Massachusetts. And I know that large cities were used as an example. But Boston has not banned plastic bags. Stores can charge 5 cents for plastic or paper bags. So that being said, I'm uncomfortable with charging 25 cents, 10 cents for a paper bag if that's the alternative. And I'm also curious if gradual steps were discussed. I too was unable to attend the meeting, so I'm curious if like a 1 year, first year there were fees on plastic paper, second year no more plastic fees, or like was it gradual? In my head that would look like year 1 plastic paper fee for plastic, year 2 no plastic paper. Like, was that thought of too? I'm sure it was, because you guys were very thorough. But I'm just curious if taking a first step towards a zero waste future versus going all in all at once was considered just to build a behavior. I'm in the work of change management, and sometimes you have to do gradual steps to build behaviors versus going all in and making people feel like you're taking something away. Instead, you are giving them a healthier environment in future, but they're not going to see it that way. They're going to see as being voluntold what to do and how to be a better citizen. So I was just curious about the process.
Councilor Mass?
So speaking just to the amendment, I know there's been some discussion beyond that, and I will speak to the full ordinance at some point when that's on the floor. But just the amendment, this line and the line after it are, I think, the most meaningless portions of this ordinance. First of all, the line after it, which says the retail establishments may keep it, why wouldn't they be able to keep it? There's no suggestion that it would go anywhere else. So that that language is moot. That the line after this, which says, the fee charged by the retail establishment for recyclable bag may be retained by the retail establishment. Where else would it go? There's nothing that says it collects. But this language itself says the retail establishment may make available for purchase a recyclable bag for a charge of no less than 25 cents. Well, first of all, recyclable bags can already be offered for purchase by anybody at any business. It's not illegal to sell them if you want to sell them. Second of all, it doesn't say you have to sell them. There's no prohibition in this ordinance of just giving those bags away. They can just be given away. They're specifically exempted from the single-use carry-out definition. And so if someone they give them away now, they can give them away in the future, you can charge for them, but if you charge, what this does is says, if you so choose to charge for a paper bag that you're not currently charging for now, you have to pay a minimum of 25 cents or a reduced amount of 10 cents. That's what this ordinance says. It does not say you can't give a bag away for free. And if someone can point to me the language where it says you can't give a recyclable paper bag away for free, I'd like to see that, because there's a problem with definitions then.
I'm going to make an amendment to the amendment. My amendment is going to be under the requirements, the sentence starting with a retail establishment, to strike that entire sentence and strike the entire sentence after that.
Second.
The reason for that amendment is that it means there's no fee. It takes it's going to just be entirely up to the retail establishment whether or not they want to charge a fee. Currently right now at Foster's or anywhere, actually, you can just ask for a paper bag and get it. I completely understand the meaning behind the fee, but I do think in this case, I think it's easier to start by taking it off the table entirely. Any other discussion about my amendment to the amendment? Councilor Sun.
I think it's a good amendment, and because, like you said, Foster's gives them paper bags away free, and eventually they might give away the reusables free. You know, it's you got to start somewhere instead of all of a sudden you got to pay for this and pay for that. It's better to make it friendly to them. Hey, we can not charge for the paper bags, then maybe we can eventually get the reusable air cloth bags. You got to start somewhere instead of start charging right up.
Give me 1 second.
So you had an amendment on the floor, and you made another amendment to it. You need to vote this amendment. My amendment. And then.
But wouldn't that just strike that one null and void?
This was on the floor. Okay. Now this is on the floor, so you have to take care of this, and then take care of that.
Okay, so we're going to do the striking the two bullets.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to vote on the amendment to the amendment first, and then we're going to come back to the original amendment. Sure.
I guess I just want counselors to realize that by eliminating the fee, this is an anti-business move. And that's not something that I plan to take responsibility for. We're increasing the cost of something that's currently given away. That is something that is going to affect our small businesses. The other thing I'd like to say is, on a more general note, a lot is being made of this charge, and I fully understand that this is a community with a lot of poverty. I work at GCC. I work with homeless students every single day. I would just like to clarify that low-income people can speak and advocate for themselves and do speak and advocate for themselves. And I have gotten not a single call from anyone saying, I am low income and this will affect me. Have you, Councilor Ricketts gets more calls than I do. So, and we all understand that. But I have not, no one came to speak tonight from that experience. I feel like it's possible that this issue is kind of being used as a way to derail it without necessarily there being a lot of evidence of how it's going to affect the lowest income people.
Okay, thank you for those comments. So now we're going to vote on taking away under the requirements, the First Amendment to the amendment is striking the sentence that says a retail establishment, and the second sentence after that, any fee charged. Okay, everybody understand that? So that's the amendment to the amendment we're voting on. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Could the noes raise your hand? Okay, so it was to take away the entire. So the amendment to the amendment passes.
So now you need to vote the amendment as amended.
No, we can amend it again.
I know.
All right, this seems, yeah, it's,
Unchanged and it's still 25 cents.
Right.
okay, so now we're going to vote the amendment as amended. I know it seems kind of strange, but I've got my parliamentary masters next to me, and I trust them. So now we're going to I'm just going to call the vote. So it's what we just voted on. We're voting on it again. The whole thing. So the whole thing as it reads now. Yeah, the whole amendment as it reads now is that under requirements, those two sentences are gone. Capiche?
Wait, so the 25 cent part is gone?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. I know it seems weird.
No,
It does seem, but yeah, it's these parliamentary things. But anyhow, Robert's rules.
whole thing right now.
It just takes away any fee it leaves it up to the stores, basically. The stores can charge, they don't have to charge, they can do what they're doing now. It doesn't change that process at all. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Noes, could you raise your hand? I think it's the same noes.
Sorry.
Okay, it passes. Okay, so now we're going, abstain.
Who abstained? Anybody?
Anybody? Okay. So now the entire motion, right now that's on the floor before any other, I just want to kind of summarize where we are right now. The entire ordinance right now has 3 different amendments to it. One is that it's 18 months. It doesn't go into effect for 18 months. Another is that an establishment that is found in violation is given a $50 fine. And the third one is that there is no fee for the fee for a bag is up to the retail establishment itself. So those are the current changes right now. That's how the ordinance is. Councilor Mass.
So now that we're on the full
Yes.
Ordinance, I do have some comments. I think the issue that this is seeking to address is a serious issue. The consumption of plastics in our environment is a serious issue. I don't take it lightly. I appreciate that it's being brought to the attention of the council, and it is something I would be willing to do something about. I don't know that this is the something, I do know that this isn't the something I'm willing to do. We have many environmental issues that we could address in this way. For example, this month we pulled lots and lots of tires out of the Green River swimming pool. Not the swimming pool per se, but the Green River. And we could say, tires are going into our rivers is bad. And really, it would be better if people biked, and it'd be even better if they walked. And so what we should do is ban cars and charge people to bike. That way they'll be incentivized to walk. Of course, we don't do that because and there probably are a couple people who might be in favor of that. But as a society, we generally don't adopt that because it is that kind of policy to control and change people's behavior, because it seems a little extreme insofar as it controls people's choice about how they run their lives. And I think that this seems like a smaller thing because people need cars or they need to get around, but they might not need a bag, right? Not in the same way. It's not as central to their daily lives. I will tell you, plastic bags are important. You heard from at least one business owner why they're important to most of his customers. Let me tell you why they're important to me. I use the plastic bags that I get mostly from Big Y, although I occasionally stop at Foster's and less often at Stop and Shop. I use those plastic bags so that when my kids went from the Federal Street School to the YMCA and went swimming, those bags went with them to put their swim clothes in, to come home, so the rest of their paperwork and their homework didn't get wet. Could I go out and be a big consumer and buy a special bag for their swimsuit? Probably. Would that be more expensive? Yes. Would that mean I couldn't do other things for my children? Yes. And so I am recycling or upcycling the plastic bag that I get. Let me tell you what else I use it for. I use it to put the cat litter in our house. After the cats have used the litter box, I clean out the litter box, I put the cat litter into the bag, I tie up the bag and put that bag into the trash. If I don't have that bag, I'm going to have to go out and buy a plastic bag for that purpose. I'm not going to put cat feces directly in my trash that can be smelled throughout the house. Likewise, I have constituents who use their plastic bags for picking up after their dogs, which is a big problem in all of our precincts. Many people go out and buy rolls of bags for picking up after their dogs. Some people don't do that. They just use the plastic bags. Not having those plastic bags available for that is going to encourage some people not to pick up after their dogs. I think that's a bad idea. I also use those plastic bags to line waste cans in my house, small little tiny ones that are around the house. I will have to go out and buy bags for that. I can tell you I have received calls from constituents saying, I use these bags over and over again, please don't ban them. Because it does affect their lives. Maybe not in the same way as a car, but it is important to them. Last year, let me tell you what I like about this ordinance, because I do want to hear what I appreciate. I appreciate that we excluded nonprofits and other organizations that are providing food to the public. I wish we had done that with the styrofoam ordinance. That was the sole reason why I didn't vote for the styrofoam ordinance, is because we didn't exempt them. And so then now that we're talking, maybe there's some consensus on that, I would love to go back to that ordinance and fix that section, because I've worked with the Salvation Army. I know their WB Mason bill has doubled and tripled since we passed that change, because now they have to buy aluminum and paper products, which are much more expensive. So I do like that. I disagree with Councilor Ricketts on restaurants. I don't know why we're picking winners and losers, because a bag that carries my Chinese food is just as bad for the environment as the bag I get from the grocery store. What's the difference other than we like restaurants, we don't like grocery stores? It seems like we're picking winners and losers based on, there are many more small businesses who might be politically influential who run restaurants. And I get that, but I'm also sympathetic, and they use a lot of bags too. I don't know the difference between Applebee's and Stop and Shop. Those bags are exactly the same as far as I see it. When last year, almost a year ago, not quite a year ago, we were before this body on a very controversial issue that I brought forward related to hypodermic needles. It was a very serious issue. I think everyone acknowledged that it was I know not every counselor was on the council at that time, but most of you were present for the dialogue and discussion. Everyone acknowledged that hypodermic needles that were disposed in the environment were really bad for our community, and they should be disposed of correctly, and we should find a way to do it. I propose putting a fine on people who distribute them without a license, somewhat similar to this. And at the end of the day, even I withdrew because compelling argument, mostly made by Councilor Dolan to me as a public citizen, about how it would severely impact a very narrow segment of our community, even though, but to them it would be a very big deal. And I would submit to you that while this probably wouldn't affect people in quite as severe a way, it affects a broader section of the community. Our community is widely divided on this issue. It was a close vote, and the noes won. But even if the noes hadn't won, it was non-binding, and it's a question that divides our community. It doesn't bring us together. And that was a question that didn't include any of the stuff about the paper bags, and glad that that's out. I would suggest there are things that we could do that would have universal support, right? This is going to have I can probably guess that this is going to have, it's going to be 6 to 7 either way, but I expect that the mayor may veto this, and it may not have the 9 votes to clear a veto. And maybe we're doing this to make a statement, but I'd rather us not do that. I'd rather us not do something that divides this community and pits us against each other, because I don't want to be someone who's characterized as, I don't care about the environment, I don't care about plastic bags in the ocean, because I do. But let me tell you the things I would do. I heard an idea that was here today that I would be completely supportive, and that is an ordinance that required anyone who provided a plastic bag, whether it be a grocery store or a restaurant, to collect those plastic bags and have them available. I would go further than that. I would support the Greenfield DPW collecting those bags and transferring them to those retail establishments doing it for them curbside, because I think people are more likely to drop their bags curbside. I would support that, even though I know it would be an additional expenditure for the taxpayers, because I think it would be more broadly handled. I think both of those would probably have universal support. It might not have universal support, but I would even support a nominal deposit on a plastic bag, that you got the deposit back when you return the bag, similar to a bottle bill. There are many things we could do that we would all agree on that would address this problem. But this measure has already divided the community, and I'd rather us not divide the community today. I can't vote for it. I don't want to go on record as being, and I hope it's not viewed that anyone who votes against this is against the environment and doesn't want to address it. There are things we can do, and at the end of the day, I hope we come back together, whether this passes or not, to address this in one of the ways that I think we could all agree on, together and be united. And I get there are constituents who want this method passed, but I don't think it's the only way to address it, and I think there are ways that we could do it and be united. Thank you.
Councilors, just because of the nature of how long this debate's going on, I am going to I didn't want to do it without saying it first, but I'm going to start enforcing the 5-minute rule that's in our rules of procedure, that no councilor can speak for more than 5 minutes on any one issue. Councilor Gilmore.
So if anybody wants to work on other environmental ordinances, I would be happy to work with people, and especially people who have differing political views. I think that would be valuable to find some good middle ground. So if you would like to do that, we can certainly set up a time and do that. I also use plastic bags for a lot of things too, but you can also I use bread bags and produce bags, and there's no shortage of plastic in my house. So sorry, I'm getting tired. We can still do that, and I think that people still should reuse their things. Also, I have an entire basement filled with single-film plastic bags that I've been saving, just because I don't throw things out unless they're ruined. And I use them to bring soup to work so it doesn't leak in my purse. So I understand that. Also, there was another point that you made. So President Reno, if you could come back to me later, I don't want to. There was a point I wanted to respond to, but I can't think right now of what it was.
I'm going to go this way, and then I'm going to go that way. Councilor Wheeler.
Yeah, there's a lot to respond to right now. I did receive calls. I talked to a woman today, and I received an email from constituents concerned about the cost that this ordinance might incur on them. And I hear that. It's valid. But at the same time, I heard from a lot of people who think it's worth passing. And for myself, I have to vote my conscience, and that's looking towards the future. I have other things to say, but I kind of feel like we need to address the fact that the ordinance currently, as amended, does not allow for paper bags except ones which are recycled. So, am I correct in, and correct me if, yeah. No, there's confusion here because there is in the definition recyclable paper bag, which is different from a recycled paper bag. And so prior to the amendment, it allowed for recyclable paper bags. Now it only allows for recycled paper bags, which a regular paper bag costs 8 or 9 cents to a business if purchased in bulk. Recycled paper bag, I think, is considerably more than that. I'm going to make a motion to, even though I don't want to further this conversation any more than we have to, amend to add a line to the requirements that a retail establishment may charge for or provide free of charge a recyclable paper bag.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. Councilor Wheeler, could you please read that again and say exactly where it goes?
Yeah, it would go directly below the line in requirements, directly below except as provided for in this chapter, etc. And it would say a retail establishment may charge for or provide free of charge a recyclable paper bag.
Point of clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Wheeler, I hear where you intend to put the amendment. Would it not be the same if you amended to say, and that is not a recycled or recyclable paper bag in the exemptions? And be
Yes,
shorter?
Councilor,
Would you
I
take that
hear
as a
that,
friendly
and
amendment?
I would consider that a friendly amendment.
I'll second it. Recycled or recyclable. Recycled or recyclable.
So it's not in exemptions, it's in definitions.
So that solves the problem without having to do an amendment to the motion?
But it's a friendly amendment. But we still have a motion on the floor from Councilor Wheeler, seconded by Councilor Stempler.
Okay.
Or recyclable.
Okay.
Here under the definition.
So is everybody clear? Okay, so Councilor Wheeler, could you read the entire for the audience and for the other councilors with the friendly amendment, what the entire amendment is that we're going to be voting on?
You want me to read the change?
Yep,
or?
all the changes.
Okay. All right. So I'm striking the line that I said before, as suggested with the friendly amendment. So right now we're looking at in the definitions section, changing the line that says single-use carry-out bag means a bag made of plastic, paper, or other material that is provided by a retail establishment to a customer at the point of sale, and that is not a recycled paper bag or a reusable bag. We are adding after the text recycled paper bag, recyclable. No, excuse me. Recycled or recyclable paper bag.
Got it.
That is the amendment. I hope that was something close to clear.
Okay. Got it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So the amendment to the motion carries. Okay.
That one's the only one.
All right. Okay. Councilor Mayo.
I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed in hearing some of the things. Every single testimony that was brought here today was in favor of the ordinance. Even the person from Foster's who initially was going to vote no said that he was in favor of the ordinance. He just was looking for a little different wording, but he was going to support the ordinance because he saw the benefits of it. As a person who last year picked up 400 bags of trash on 4 streets, I picked up a lot of plastic bags. And I continue to clean up on 4 streets, not 400 bags amount last year, but probably about 100 so far this year. So it does make an impact. It does make a difference as to how people view this town, and people have come to this town because it's a green town, and it's we've made a commitment to greening our town, and that means cleaning it up and going solar and being forward in our thinking in terms of not just what's going to happen tomorrow, but what about our future, our grandchildren, and I don't have any grandchildren, but I want a world where grandchildren can survive and thrive. And the way that we are decimating our oceans and our river bodies and our streets, nobody's going to want to live in this world if it survives. So a plastic ban is a very small item to quibble about in the big picture things, for us to have a world in 50 years that we can say we made a difference 50 years ago, and that's where I want to be. That's where I was hoping that this ordinance would be. And I'm a bit disappointed that it's not going to be there. Now, I have to say, I can't vote for the way that's been thrashed about, because there are some small businesses in town that were beneficial that came to me and said that they couldn't be in favor of and they do recycling on their own, but they can't be, their bottom line said that it was going to be very difficult for them to do more than they have done already because of the size of their business, and that they were on the verge of leaving town anyway. And I think there are many stores that are in that position. But we have to take a look at the bigger picture in terms of, some of my colleagues here said, what are we getting, and where does that leave the voters? I can tell you where it leaves them, in a cleaner world. And that's where I want to be. That's where I want future people to be. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
Councilor Stemple.
I just wanted to make one final statement before we vote, hopefully. Imposing fees on hypodermic needles is in no way, shape, or form similar to imposing a fee on a plastic bag. Hearing testimony from Councilor Mass, actually, it didn't necessarily change my mind, but I think it solidified my vote, because plastic bags are not important. Using plastic bags is a behavior that we've learned, passed down through establishments who have provided them to us for shopping. Behaviors can be changed. And so I think we have so much more going for Greenfield than plastic bags. That I look forward to supporting this amended ordinance as a first step towards a healthier future. because I see other communities I see other communities in the Pioneer Valley. For instance, West Springfield just moved to having solar fields, and they're actually in Montague. We've had solar fields for a while. So I'm seeing other neighboring communities following our footsteps. And it's really important to me that, as we've heard tonight, that we continue to be a leader. And although it's not exactly where we want it to be or where it was intended to be for the moment, it is a good first step in the right direction. And we're seeing communities like Boston, Athol. I was surprised to see Athol on the list, honestly, because I thought they'd be in step with a different opinion on banning plastic bags. Plastic bags are not important. That's all.
Councilor Dolan?
I'd like to just respond to a couple things. I think Councilor Mass's goals of finding consensus are laudable. My comment on that would be the things that were proposed as things we could reach consensus on don't work. There are already recycling stations in Stop and Shop and Foster's and Home Depot and Big Y, and still less than 1% of these bags are recycled. I think that, far from, jumping into this all at once, those kind of, to me, constitute steps that are far too small in the scale of the problem. Moving on, I understand that people reuse these bags, and that's great. Reuse is somewhere on that hierarchy of solid waste. Using a bag twice is only marginally better than using a bag once. You're still throwing it away. It's still entering the waste stream, even if you use it for cat litter. There are other solutions. You can put your cat litter in a paper bag, which will biodegrade. For me, this issue, the plastic bag issue, is what they call in economics an externality, and I'll define it for you. An externality is the cost or benefit that affects a party who did not choose to incur that cost or benefit. Meaning, the people who are going to have to make the payment are not the people who are getting the service. And the reason that there are PCBs in the Housatonic River is because that was an externality for GE. They were able to dump the waste in the river and never have to pay for it. Or maybe they had to pay for it years and years later, but at that moment. So a lot of our pollution problems are related to economic externalities in one way or another. And the point of this ordinance was not to switch a bag for another bag. It was to eliminate that externality and make people take responsibility for their choices about what they're putting into the environment. So I actually don't think, far from reaching consensus on this, I don't think I can now support my own ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of calling the question?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, so we're gonna do a roll call vote, and this is on the ordinance as amended, and if this gets voted down, it cannot be brought up again for a year, so keep that in mind. 9 months.
Counselor Sund,
No.
Counselor Lobeck,
No.
Counselor Alice.
No.
Counselor Dolan,
Reluctantly, yes.
Counselor Gilmore. Yes. Counselor Wheeler,
Yes.
Counselor Mayo. No. Counselor Lanovich. No. Counselor Mass.
No.
Vice President Ricketts.
Yes.
Counselor Stemple.
Yes.
The motion fails. Okay, give me 1 second, my agenda's all messed up.
I have some first readings.
Councilor Stemple.
First readings, Town Council, October 17th, 2018. The sum of $12,000 be transferred transferred to assessor full-time wages to assessor property assessment services and the FY19 operating budget. The sum of $63,832 be transferred from 2601, the FEMA reimbursement fund, to offset a deficit and bonded debt pay downs in the FY19 operating budget. The sum of $121,168 be transferred from 1627 bond premiums to offset a deficit and bonded debt pay downs in the FY19 operating budget. The sum of $72,800 be transferred from general stabilization for food inspection services and to increase a local building inspector from part-time to full-time in the FY19 operating budget. 511 food inspection services, $50,000. 241 building department, $22,800. Total, $72,800. The sum of $439,850 be transferred from the following accounts to offset a deficit on the temporary interest account in the FY19 operating budget. 8,400 general stabilization, $364,850. 197 central services, $20,000. 491 cemeteries, $10,000. 543 veterans benefits, $25,000. 913 unemployment, $20,000. Total, $439,850.
Thank you, and I completely skipped over presentation of petitions and similar papers. No, that's okay. I mean, that was my fault because I couldn't find my agenda. Report of committees. Council Mass, I just wanted to ask for your CRE. I didn't see the library issue on the agenda. The ADA compliance, library return. I thought we talked about that at committee chairs.
I do think we talked about that. I didn't prepare the agenda. The clerk's office did, but I'm happy to discuss that if anyone wants to come to address it at our meeting. We're going to be at Greenfield Community College downtown campus at room 309 this year.
Thank you.
I mean,
So just so folks know, some folks in the community would like, there's a return box at the library, and if you're in a wheelchair or cane, you can't get to it. And so the CRE committee is going to speak to how to address that issue. And so if anybody out there wants to come and speak on that issue, please do. Any other committee reports? Nope. Okay, seeing none. Any motions for reconsideration? Okay. And new business. Councilor Mass.
It is with a heavy heart that I ask unanimous consent to dedicate the minutes of tonight's meeting to the memory of former councilor Dirk Cummerly, who passed away in Florida this month.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Does anybody want to discuss? No. All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes will be dedicated. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Sure. Thank you, everybody. This meeting is adjourned.
All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank,
located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.